log into which? You know, the app is?
Sir, okay.
The time is 6:33. We're going to call this special meeting to order. First thing will be the invitation. If everybody could please bow their heads. Everybody, thank you. All right. If everybody please bow their heads. Dear Lord, we ask that you give us wisdom in the things that we need to listen to tonight, the decisions that we need to make. That you grant us patience and understanding in all of this, and that you put your protection over all of us as a council and as a city. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, we'll all stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, as in all of our meetings, understand the rules of the law in effect. All right, we're going to move on to item number 4, citizens' comments. Do I have any comment cards? All right. First up be Mr. Quinn. Return on, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Robert Quinn, 1401 Carrara Drive. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm actually not up here to talk to you guys, though. I'm here to talk to everybody else in the room and anyone who might be watching the video later. Emergency Services District. I think our journey over the past year has shown that we need to take fire service as the bone that's being fought over away from local politics and bring that up to the county commissioner level. So at the back of the room there is a sheet if anyone wants to sign in support of forming an emergency services district for Fire District 22. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brian?
Brian Caldronia, 15 Fireside Drive. At the town hall regarding fire protection, Mr. Turnbull stated that he believed the majority of citizens did not want 100% volunteer service, and that they did want a hybrid department. I believe that is indeed the case, and I also believe at least 2 other members of this council believe the same thing. So 100% volunteer is not an option at this point. The second issue is the viewpoint that you somehow have some ownership stake in NCBFD's assets. Mr. Turnbull stated that the one reason he would not currently contract with MCVFD is because the city, over the years, has paid money toward the refurbishment, replacement of outdated equipment. Therefore, the city has some amount of ownership in the current MCVFD assets, and they will not realize that ownership if they continue to contract with MCVFD. MCVFD is like you have always said, no different than any other contractor. All business and service providers build into their budgets the cost to replenish outdated equipment. That is a necessary aspect for every service provider if they are responsibly looking toward the future. Do any of you honestly believe that the city owns a stake in the trash trucks that Waste Connections uses? Of course not. So the point Mr. Turnbull made regarding owning a portion of MCVFD assets is illogical and reckless, to the point that it directly impacted the contract negotiations between the two parties. We heard at the town hall that members of council were discussing via email the inevitability of MCVFD to be in breach of contract if they accepted the city's proposed contract. This proves the city was not acting in good faith regarding contract negotiations. I don't know what more irrefutable proof we as citizens need to realize that. The next issue is one that Mr. Herron continues to bring up. It's the argument that the unincorporated areas of Fire District 22 do not pay an equitable share compared to the call volume and quantity of homes. The problem with this argument is that the $67,500 that went to MCVFD to serve the unincorporated area is not the true cost for MCVFD to serve that area. It is merely all the money the county can provide at this given time. So the fact that Mr. Herron assumes that money is the actual cost for MCVFD to provide that service is a gross mischaracterization of the situation. Mr. Herron, you told everyone in attendance at the town hall that the contract you guys provided MCVFD was based on the county contract amount, extrapolated to the city based on call volume and numbers of houses. That created an extremely artificially low contract value that you knew MCVFD could not operate under. Again, this proves the city was not negotiating in good faith. I'm furious with the previous council and 3 members of this council for not acting in good faith during contract negotiations with MCVFD. That has been proven, and I believe it is grounds for removal from office due to incompetence. Nevertheless, at this point in time, with October 1st looming, I urge you to vote to approve the interlocal agreement that paves the way towards an MCVFD-MCFR merger, provide benefits to the firefighters, accept the SAFER grant, but develop a plan for year 4 and make that plan available to the public. I recognize that some of you will not be on this council in year 4, but this decision impacts those that will be on the council then, and it won't be them that gets blamed for the lack of a plan in year 4. It will be you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kipp.
Mark Kipp at 31 Fireside. 25 days. Over the last many months, we've had many expressions of commitment by members of this council to have an operational capability in place on midnight, 30 September, that would allow for a seamless and unbroken transition for fire service in McLendon-Chisholm into 1 October. Ultimately, elections are the ultimate expression of the will of the people, something we've talked about a lot. On May 5th, the people spoke, I think, very clearly and loudly. Over the past several months, you've been receiving guidance, input, plans, recommendations, and ultimately a course of action by 2 professionals with some 50 years of experience explaining how the most effectively and within the budget and the tax rate that we'll be discussing next week, that they could set up an operational capability on 1 October and fulfill the mandate established by this council. The thing I think that's frustrating many people across America tonight is that at virtually every level of government, there seems to be a fundamental breakdown where those that are governing are ignoring what they have been called to do by the people who elected them. We saw that in Washington, D.C. in the last 2 days. We've seen it played out in this council chamber over the last several months. So I implore the council tonight. Make those decisions that allow you to move forward on a budget next week and setting a tax rate for 2019. You have 25 days. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Lisa Miller, comment, please? All right, at this point, close citizens' comments. Before I move on to number 5, which is a statement by myself and the mayor, the city administrator, Dave, would like to address the council, so we'll allow him a moment to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, as you know, I'm not one to speak up a lot unless I'm spoken to, and unless I see something that is very important that I need to address. And so, all my time having served the city, this is the first time I've done this. When I was asked by Mayor Steinhagen some time ago why I don't speak up in meetings more than I do, I answered, I was raised to speak only when spoken to. Meaning that the council's been elected to use their abilities, their judgment, to make decisions that affect the city. They don't need me to speak for them. But that if you wanted to know something, all you had to do was ask, and I would do my best to give you the answer. I also stated, though, that if I saw you going off a bridge, I would speak up. Well, we are now at that point. You're about to go off that bridge. You're close to having no manned fire department, leaving your citizens unprotected. I feel compelled as your administrator to point this out to you, although it's been done many times, many evenings over the last months. The city's been dealing with this issue of fire service for some time now. We have watched the council go back and forth over the issue. We have listened to presentations and discussions on and on. We have heard our citizens, for the most part, encourage the council to do the best for the city. I realize that making a decision regarding fire service for the city is monumental. You are making history by what you decide. It is a huge responsibility. However, we as staff need to have your decision. We need your direction as to what to do. We are facing the 1st of October and need direction as to how to proceed. I'm no fire expert. We're lucky enough to have at least 2 of those in-house. But I do have 20 years of expertise in the public safety field. That said, I can clearly see the way to go for the city is to merge. It makes simple economic sense. There is a volunteer force already in place, which you can use to draw from to staff the department temporarily until the hiring process can be completed. The assets MCVFD has, trucks, gear, hose, tools, etc., can be employed, saving the city who knows how much money. MCVFD has 2 stations, which may not be top of the heap, but they are adequate to begin operations without going to the setup expense of a temporary station. Taking advantage of these assets will allow the process to slow down, take a natural course until MCFRD is completely in place. It will keep them from going too fast and perhaps making a mistake in the process with things like locating and building a new fire station. Staff is staff. Your workers, hired by you. The council are the policy setters, elected by the people. Staff is asking you to set the policy tonight, to proceed with a merger, to get out of the way and let staff and the attorneys go to work and bring you a fire service that I'm sure you'll be proud of. You then can watch your department evolve, fulfilling your citizens' needs while giving them the safety and security that they expect of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. All right, now on to item number 5, public statement by myself as the mayor. I apologize, I couldn't print it out. My printer's not working at the house, so I've got it snapshotted on my phone. On April 10th of 2018, the McLendon-Chisholm City Council adopted ordinance 2018-01, which added Article 5.03 to the City Code of Ordinance, creating a municipal fire rescue department, hereby known as the McLendon-Chisholm Fire Rescue. As the mayor, I am obligated by law to faithfully execute the mandate. Unfortunately, since being elected in May, the actions of this council have been to delay and deflect efforts by Chief Simmons to fulfill the obligations of Ordinance 2018-01. And furthermore, through deceit or deception, members of this council have worked to undermine Chief Simmons in his efforts to ensure fire services in our city after September 30th, just as Mr. Kippen just said, just 25 days from now. Tonight, these efforts will stop. I want to reassure the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm that I am committed to ensure we have a fully operational fire department on October 1 of 2018. We will honor the commitment we made to our citizens on April 10th, 2018, that this city council and government is committed to protecting and improving the quality of health and welfare of this community by establishing the MCFR. Chief Simmons stated we have all the essential elements in place to establish the MCFR by merging with the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. That powerful combination will create a new department that will serve us well into the future, but one we can all be justifiably proud of. Between April 25th and July 16th of this year, the council tasked Chief Simmons to develop and present a plan with a budget this council could take action on. Chief Simmons did that. In June, we asked Chief Simmons to revive relationships with the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department and in collaboration with them to offer the best method to rapidly create a municipal fire department that brings value to the community while ensuring we maintain our existing tax base. Again, Chief Simmons did this. My question, and a question posed by the overwhelming majority of the citizens, those of you sitting here and those that may not be in attendance tonight, is why are we not taking action on the chief's plans? We've heard this loud and clear at the recent town hall meeting. The only other option is to continue to maintain our established relationship with the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. While this may offer advantages, for this to happen, it will require the city to amend or to overturn that ordinance, 2018-01. What we do know and what we have heard is the merger plan presented by Chief Simmons and Chief Murphy, which is the basis of line item 430 of public safety of the proposed budget of 2019 tax rate. Based on what I understand, the plan presented was sound and logical and can be completed by the end of the month. The only issue that needs to be worked out is the transition timeline of McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department assets. This is not an impossible task, but it cannot be developed, nor should it be expected to be developed until the council makes clear in its intention that it's committed to the merger to bring the capabilities of each together and to build a department that will far exceed anything we can create by the end of the month, independent of the volunteer fire department. Therefore, it is time for the games to stop. The residents of this city are fatigued and baffled. Residents and our partners from across the county are baffled as well. Both the prior council and this council have been able to find a solution over this issue for over 10 months. Since last November, an overwhelming number of our citizens have consistently stated they wanted the questions answered on fire service, or the questions of fire service resolved. Tonight starts a process in which I will ensure the citizens can have their answer before we begin deliberations on the budget. We owe it to our citizens and the community as a whole to resolve it in a way that makes sense both financially for both our citizens and our partners across the county. Okay? As you've heard me say, I'm bound to uphold that ordinance. Okay? It's imperative you as a citizen convey your thoughts to your council members, whether it's by phone call, email, some sort of communications. Okay? I can only do what the law allows me. I took an oath, just like every one of these people sitting up here, to this city. Just as I took an oath prior to that as a Marine, to defend this country. I'm doing what I can to honor that oath to you. I expect my council to do the same thing. We have seen presentations up here on what is the best bang for your buck when it comes to tax money. It was presented by Chief Simmons. It was presented by Chief Murphy. Okay? There's no fight between them. There's no ugliness between you gotta do this or I gotta do that. They work together as professionals. Right? We've also heard about financing a brand new station, buying additional fire trucks. Okay? Even if the cost is cheap right now, over time, it still costs us more money. I've had my say. Thank you for listening. All right. As soon as I get this back up and running, we will move to item number 6, town hall meeting response. It's going to be discussion and action regarding the comments and ideas presented by citizens at the August 28th town hall meeting. That was also requested by me. This is going to be a discussion up here as to what you as the citizen conveyed to us. Okay? Do I have a motion to discuss what was done last Tuesday?
I'll make a motion to discuss
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Everybody willing to discuss what the citizens said? Okay, are you ready? Yeah. All right. We have a vote?
For what?
To discuss, well, we don't need
There was
to
a second,
discuss.
so
It's open for discussion to discuss what they said. You know, I will start with, you know, I don't have my notes from last week, but I know that there were more for a merger. There were a few to keep the original McLendon-Chisholm volunteer fire department, and a few that said that they were in support of an all-volunteer department as McLendon-Chisholm Fire Rescue. Okay? Mr. Boone, I'll let you start, and we'll move right down the line.
I think my biggest takeaway from that town hall was that the citizens expect and deserve a plan. We've talked about this long enough. We've gotten real data to show what our options are and which ones make sense, which ones don't. I believe we have all the information we need to make a decision, and I believe that decision, everything that we've seen, leans, points directly at the merger option. The stand-up alone option is not even a consideration at this point, as far as I'm concerned, because of the expenses, the lack of being able to utilize the resources that exist with MCVFD, and the plan that Chief Murphy and Chief Simmons have come together with their expertise to recommend. I think it's time for the council to listen to their expertise and to move forward and essentially serve our role as a council, let them serve their role as fire chiefs, and move forward with the plan that they presented and basically get it done. So, stand with that.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Certainly, my drawings from that town hall were that the citizens were frustrated and ready for us to move forward. We've been dealing with this too long. I've heard discussion about, time for everybody to let go of the conspiracy theories. Let's just come together. Let's be the jewel of Rockwall County once again. There are several things. Several people spoke out about why can't we just do the MCVFD because it is the lowest cost. And I understand that. The ordinance says that we will establish a city-owned fire department. It doesn't have a by date. It doesn't say effective 1 October 2018. So we can have a plan to move forward and still utilize the services of a fully functional fire department. And while I know a lot of the council probably deems my comments as being prejudicial because of my time in that department, I don't believe they are prejudicial at all. I believe they're totally based on fact, functionality, and the ability to protect the citizens. I, for one, want a department that knows what's going on and that is acquainted with the fire district to respond to my calls. I do understand that in the town hall, the discussion about the outlying area the unincorporated area of the county was discussed, and I understand that's an issue, but I believe that's an issue that we, as MCFR and the city, have just as much as MCVFD. I don't believe it's their baggage. I believe it's our baggage. It belongs to the city. And it's something that we have to negotiate with the Commissioners Court in order to get resolution on. So what I heard from everybody was they want decisions made, and they want to make now so that we actually have some transition time. We don't want to be waiting until September the 30th to be trying to sign something and then have an external agency try to throw together a plan to be doing work with the city and the various things. I believe every citizen said, okay, we're tied to this. We understand the long-range term of it. The interesting thing is the safer grants will ease the burden of transitioning into a city-owned department considerably. Year 4 of that plan will actually be when the big impact hits if we don't get any additional grants. But that gives us a lot of time to plan and make wise decisions. And I think that's what's important. If we continue to be reactive instead of proactive, we're going to find ourselves behind the 8 ball again. So I believe that's what the citizens said. They said they want the merger and they want the decision made now. And that's what I took from the meeting. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Turner?
Well, it was commented at the meeting and tonight that I have been on record supporting the merger. I am. The problem has always been getting an agreement put together that worked for both parties. Mr. Short, or excuse me, Mayor Short,
Yes, sir.
said tonight that we need to reach out to MCVFD and invite them in. I believe we have. What we have not heard is any type of concrete requirements for them to come in. There have been no deadlines or no timelines, no listing of items that could take longer, shorter, what they're willing to do, what they have to do. All we've heard is, you guys need to do whatever we tell you to do. And that, in my opinion, is not the right way to go about this. If we can come up in the next week with a reasonable agreement that's, specifies timelines, I believe we could probably sign it at our next meeting. But not jumping too far ahead, I have yet to see anything presented to us that is acceptable or cost-effective to the city and its citizens. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Mr. Herring?
On August 13th, Judge Sweet was here with, also with the Chief Bailey, and they were in attendance, and halfway through that city council meeting, Judge Sweet came up to the dais here and spoke to myself and to Councilperson Balcom. And what he had to say was, he said that when he was the mayor of Rockwell, that he disallowed the Rockwell Fire Department from acting as first responders based on the fact that Rockwell had in EMS, Rockwell Police, and Rockwell Sheriff's deputies who are already acting as first responders and arriving before the fire trucks. He said with Rockwell's EMS now meeting the contracted response times of 7 minutes, 59 seconds for 10 out of the 11 months, the past 10 out of 11 months, why does McLendon-Chisholm need its fire department to act as first responders? Very good question. Why? And so I have a presentation tonight. I don't know whether I'll get to put it up or not, but I'll gladly make it available to the citizens. It shows over half of all of our calls are EMS related to the fact that our MCVFD can't even act as first responders. They can only do BCLS, which is basically what the sheriff's deputy can do. So now with the MCVFD being able to arrive after the ambulance on a lot of occasions, and I'll tell you an anecdotal story about a lady who fell down in my subdivision. She hit her head. The ambulance came, treated her. She chose not to be taken to the hospital in the ambulance. As the ambulance was leaving my subdivision, the fire truck showed up. That's a little bit late. So the question is, do we need MCVFD to be acting as first responders? And I've always said, no, we don't need them to do that, especially now where we have the EMS, Rockwell EMS, that can respond within 7 minutes, 59 seconds. And specifically, that's 7 minutes, 59 seconds at nighttime, when our volunteer fire department is truly a volunteer fire department. So as you remember, our fire department is only manned from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So from 7 p.m. at night to 7 a.m., they're truly all volunteer. So they'll get there when they get there. So I don't see a need for them to be acting as EMS. So one of the comments that came up was overwhelming support. So by all estimates I've heard, there's somewhere between 3,200 and 3,600 people that live in the city of McLendon-Chisholm. Is that correct?
I've not gotten that number from the cause. I've heard 32 and I've heard 27.
Okay, somewhere around there. So we've seen maybe 100 to 200 people show up here to city council meetings to speak to us. That's 1/10. That's not an overwhelming majority of anybody. 1/10 of anything is not a majority. So don't try to sell that as being a majority. So we've had a very small, vocal minority come in here trying to push us. There's a whole bunch of other people, 90% of the population of the city, we haven't heard from. So don't say that you speak for everybody when you don't necessarily speak for everybody. Mr. Davis made a comment about the fact that Fire District 22 can't be serviced for the count, what the county provides at $67,500. What he's really saying is, what he means is that the people of McLendon-Chisholm, us taxpayers, are paying to provide services to people who don't live in our city. Are you okay with that? I'm not okay with that. I think that everybody ought to bear their own responsibility. Should I put gas in somebody else's car? Should I go cook their dinner? Should I buy their groceries? No. So why should I be buying them fire services? So think about this. If the reality is, if the county's not providing us enough funds to cover the cost of MCVFD providing services out there, guess where the rest of the cost is coming from? Off of the backs of citizens of McLendon-Chisholm. That's not right. And that's what I've always spoken about. So the two main things that I've always spoken about was, one, do we actually need a manned service? Based on the fact that now we have the EMS that's meeting the required times of 7 minutes, 59 seconds for the last 10 out of 11 months. I say no, we don't need to have that, especially 50% of all our calls are EMS related. So take that away, what do they have to do? And so I've got a presentation that clearly goes through what calls that they do, and you'd be surprised to find out that the 4th highest call volume that they have are canceled calls. The 10th highest call volume that they have is to go in and unlock people's car doors. So think about those are the kind of things that we're paying for a fire department to go out and do. So I really believe if they want to do those, they can do those as a volunteer. I don't have any complaints about that. But if I'm funding them to do things like that, then they're just padding their numbers by doing things that aren't really germane to being a fire department. And fire is on the 4th down the list of all their calls. Last thing I'll say is the paid versus the volunteer fire department. I said that Judge Sweet came up here and made a very compelling case. I don't understand why we have our fire department acting as a first responders. I know why they did before, because we tried to ask them not to do that. They told us, hey, you don't tell us what to do, as what Mr. Turnbull said. They told us, hey, you just give us the money and get out of the way and we'll do what we're going to do. That's not how contracts work. Contracts work where you hire somebody to do a specific job. You don't give them money and then they go out there and decide what they're going to do for you. So that's my position on this. I've always said from the very beginning, I don't think we need a manned service, and I've always voted appropriately. And so I don't believe that we need to be paying for this merger where we're going to add a whole bunch of more paid people. I think what we really need to go back, take a look at what our real requirements are, make some candid decisions, Mr. Mayor, and decide what it is that our city needs. A city of less than somewhere around 3,000 people, we're spending nearly as much as Royce City is spending for fire services. Does that make any sense? They're 12,000 people, we're 3,000. How can that possibly be that we're spending that much money? So I think that we need to stop. We need to look at what we're doing, and we need to make some conscious decisions and say, wait a minute, with EMS out there now, we need our fire department doing emergency services calls. If not, that cuts half of their requirements out. Now, let's sit there and start looking at the other things that they're doing. And then they can determine, maybe with the fact that in the last 31 months, we've only had 30 fires, maybe that ought to tell you something, that maybe we're having less than 1 fire per month. Do we need a manned fire service to maintain fires at a rate of 1 per month? No. That's just my position. And as we take this vote, you know, I'm going to vote appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron. Ms. Baldwin?
I have not really seen the options the way that some people are seeing the options that were presented from the fire chiefs. Out of all the council members, I've done a lot of research dating back since last year. Made presentations, they're always readily available on the city website. I could have given it to you directly to PDFs on that. I wrote a presentation about numbers that don't make sense. I compared our city to other cities, our population, the budgets, things of that nature. You know, call volume. I mean, I got a matrix. It's awesome. Never got a chance to even present any of that stuff. And, you know, I could tell you that from January 1st to July 31st, we had 90 calls within the city. 90 calls. You know, one of the things I keep on hearing about firefighters is like they always, you know, whenever they go in, they have a plan to go in. But sometimes that plan doesn't go right. You have to have plan B. And, you know, as a city council, we were up against a wall where we had to make a decision based on our oath and what we were called to do. And we had to make that decision that we need to create our own municipal fire department. Our fire chief, he was our alternative to the situation that we were in. You know, there's a lot of rumors and a lot of stuff that's been said up here, and I absolutely I disagree to make it seem that we were the ones that have been hindering MCFR, which is crazy because we were the ones who established to want to have our municipal fire department. You know, I really do truly believe that the fire chiefs, I mean, their hearts, I believe they really truly want to just fight fires. You know, I don't think that they have intentions to be involved on administrative the way that they have been involved in recently. And I'm sure it's tough, I'm sure it's hard, but at the end of the day, we hired a fire chief to come up with a solution. And, you know, why not? And so I keep going back on my notes and listening all these things about, oh, we haven't been transparent, we haven't been doing this, we haven't done that, and everything. It's like, you know, half the people that actually came up here, the council that made citizen comments, you know, they don't really reach out to me. Now, there's been a handful of them, yeah, I have talked to either by phone or email and all that, we did exchange on that, and I provided whatever information they asked me. I don't have a problem talking to you, I don't have a problem showing you this, I don't have a problem showing you anything within my reach. If you have a question, I will go find that answer if I don't know the answer. I don't know where in the world someone came up with, oh, this station is going to cost $1 million. I can tell you the nearest thing that came up to $1 million was the 6-year, they called it 6-year plan, but really it's a forecast. And I mean, if you look at it, I mean, I show you right here. I mean, it says 2018, there were total funding required, $429,511. County funding, $67,500. City funding requested, $362,001. And then additional funding required, $1.8 million. And they were expecting to replace engine 41 for $300,000, and then the fire station 1.5. So for a new fire station, and this is what was escalating. It was escalating hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. It was going somewhere. Someone needed to stop it and question what is going on. We are the ones who have to hold these people accountable. That is your expectation as as a council. If a contractor is doing something wrong, and we hear about it from the citizens, you know, we have to do something about it. They are no different. We had citizens come up here that truly, you know, wanted to understand what in the world is going on. They wanted to see solutions, they wanted to see answers, they want to see progress. But then we have other people that don't even live here, coming here, trying to influence us. And they started calling themselves deplorable. They're second-class citizens. No, you're not. The people that you need to talk to are the ones that, or the county commissioner. If you want to have that service with MCVFD, I even made a public statement, no one is stopping that from happening. If you want them to service your area, you have the power to go and talk to the people that's in charge of that, and that is Rockwall County. Commissioner Sport, I mean, they take citizen comments all the time from at every meeting. I personally feel that there is a way to get through all this. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to make sure that we're thinking about all of the citizens, not a special political group or a special pact, and that's how I feel that that's been going on for months now, ever since the whole election thing happened. And there's been a constant influence, and I see it, and the thing is, you guys don't see it because you're not on this side, because we're having to put stuff on the agenda, or we're being hindered from being able to put stuff on the agenda.
We're talking about the fire service, not the agenda.
Yeah, we are talking about fire service.
Ms. Baldwin, keep it to the fire service.
Just like last week, whenever we had the discussion to have a special meeting, the whole purpose of the special meeting, according to my notes, was about fire.
Ms. Baldwin, it's about the town hall meeting.
About fire protection and direction.
Ms. Baldwin, it's about the town hall meeting. If you want to get off topic, you're out of order, and you will not be allowed to finish. Okay? It's about last week's town hall meeting, period.
Again, see, this is, in regard to town hall meeting, people are looking for answers, looking for information, and once again, this is exactly what I'm having to deal with. Do I want to see us find a cost-efficient solution? Absolutely, and I am for the best plan. And again, sometimes the best plan, what we see, may not be the thing that comes about. I mean, I honestly believed whenever I heard that we had 30 applications for employment for MCFR, and most of them were coming from MCVFD, I was thrilled. I really honestly was thrilled. I was like, all right, this is awesome. This is great. And they can be a part of MCFR, and we can start moving forward. And as far as like the station and all that kind of stuff, I mean, we already discussed about muni leases, the most affordable thing out there for us, which cannot be available for the type of organization that they are. You know, we talked about that. It's not going to increase, you know, the budget or affect the taxes or anything like that. We're not asking for a bond. We're not doing any of that. So anyway, there's ways for things to get done, and I'm just hoping that we make the best decision for all the citizens, not for a specific group. That's all.
All right. Since there's not going to be any action, and we're just responding and discussing the comments that citizens made and the interaction both back and forth during the town hall meeting, we'll go ahead and move to item number 7. Go ahead.
I would ask that you move number 7 to after number 9.
Okay, we can do that. Let's move to number 8, interlocal agreement interlocal agreement for fire protection services, discussion and action regarding an interlocal agreement between Rockwall County and the city of McLendon-Chisholm regarding fire protection services for for the unincorporated area of the county provided through the city's agreement with McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. This was requested by Commissioner Bailey. Commissioner Bailey, did you have a presentation or something that you wanted to discuss tonight?
Well, I did have some, but I don't think we're gonna be able to, are we capable of doing that now?
If you'll just make sure that I know the mic's on already up there, that you can step up there, the floor is yours on number 8.
Okay. Step around here. Let me begin by saying I have confidence in you. First of all, Las Vegas could have made a whole lot of money today betting on who was going to be here and who wasn't. There's a lot of things that are said and done that are correct, but they're little snippets. They're little instant snapshots. I think that's a situation that possibly you and your citizenry is in right now, is that a lot of people focusing on certain parts, and this is a big picture. It's not just, or there are a lot of things that make up the fire department. There are a lot of things that make up you as a council and what you have to do. I just returned last week from Austin. Sweet and myself and 2 of the other commissioners were there. And it's a Texas Association of Counties, and in that, our theme or motto right now is to restore what's right. And I'm not bringing that to you to say you've got to go back to a certain point, but the example that was used was, in Jefferson County and the city of Jefferson and the river through there, and someone decided to blow up the log jam, and when they did, guess what happened? All the water went down and went into the Gulf, and they drained all the bios and everything else that was back behind them, and guess what? They had a whole lot of problems, and somebody thought that they were doing something right, and it didn't work. So they had to go back and kind of restore where they were and what they needed to do, or make some kind of changes to what had happened. When I talk about little small things, and I'm going to read you a few of these, and then I'm going to get to my presentation, Mayor. But I think that it ties in. And I think that there's, like I said, a lot of people that have a lot of different small pieces and don't have all of the big picture. You probably heard a lot of these comments going along the way. The unincorporated citizens don't pay. And these statements are correct to a certain degree. All of them, okay? Follow. The county doesn't pay enough money. The ISO ratings may go up. The ISO ratings may go down. A city fire department would cost more money. How about the volunteer fire department won't give us their books to review? How about this one? The county doesn't have to provide fire service. How about this one? The city does not have to provide fire service. There's a whole lot of emotions that go into this decision, and a whole lot of people that have different small pieces that they've looked at, that they concentrate on, that they verified, they researched. They're really to stake their lives on this is the right answer. But they don't have the big picture and what needs to be done. And that big picture, and let me start by saying this. There's only 2 members on the council that I haven't really spent much time talking with at all, and that's the 2 gems that are on there. And Jim, I know, Mr. Herring, excuse me, I think you used a slide in the town hall meeting, and I know you're a tough guy and you're not gonna think that I'm picking on you, but I wanna use that as an example as we go forward, okay? So you can talk to me after it's over with, but I wanna try to make a decision. And you were showing this slide up here, and first of all, let me tell you that fire departments don't go by cities or unincorporated areas. Fire departments are designated by meets and bounds, whether it's in a city, outside the city, or wherever. This particular slide shows the darker green, I believe it is the city limits of McLendon-Chisholm. The outer area, the lighter green color, is that unincorporated area that's out there. But they're a fire district. And you have signed your city on, Mr. Moody's not here, I don't think, on November the 11th of 2011, you signed a mutual aid agreement with the county and all of the cities that are in this county, and it was signed by the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. Those signatories, which were on that mutual aid agreement, had Mr. Butler's signature on there, and it had Mr. Williams signing as the fire chief at that particular time. And Ms. Balkin and I have talked about that in the past, about maybe those things ought to be updated. Maybe those names aren't correct. Why haven't we done something about it? But all of us signed that mutual agreement, and that mutual agreement says that we will work underneath the North Texas Council of Governments mutual aid agreement. And there's a whole lot of things into that agreement that you probably haven't ever even seen, and I know I haven't seen. But let me tell you what it did do and what it does do. It says that this city will go anywhere in that fire district, irregardless of who's paying or who's not paying. It says you're responsible for Fire District 22, and you've signed that saying, you know what? What's Fire District for Rockwall? Anybody know? Jim, what was Roy City? Okay, let's call it 10, 11, whatever. It says you'll go over there if they need help. And you'll work with those people. So not only are you going to go make a call in the county to somebody that doesn't pay, now guess what? You're going to go into another city that darn sure doesn't pay anything to pay for fire safety that goes in there. You said, I'll go anywhere in this fire district and take care of fire. It really, I think, basically is set up more towards disaster and civil emergencies is what a mutual aid agreement is set up for, not just fires, because the whole thing then goes into an explanation of if you're the requesting party and you say, Heath, I need your help, and they come down here, and guess what? If they stay more than 24 hours, you start paying them. You pay them a stipend. You feed them. You do everything. We don't have those details in the works. But if they're here more than 24 hours, and you ask them to come down here, you're going to pay a whole lot more for their assistance. But this is for a tornado that comes through, or wind blows down a building, or something that, it's going to take a longer time to do. But my thought is, you have an obligation to go anywhere in this county based on the signed document that you signed, and those representatives signed that document, and in that document it says that they were authorized by a resolution of this city to sign that document and obligate the city to go into all those different parts, whether it's in the unincorporated or it's to another city. You're on the line, in my opinion, for that. Seek legal clarification on that if you want to. But that's certainly my opinion of what I think that does. There's all other kind of terms in there. It says that this thing annually renews for 12 months. It never goes away as long as somebody does not change the agreement or opt out. And you have 30 days to opt out. And if you do, guess what? The other parties, they all got to get back together and got to re-sign a mutual aid agreement. But you're also talking about a lot of things that the COG provides to the two dispatch centers, the one in Rockwall and the one in the sheriff's office. Responsible for all those calls that come in, whether to designate if it is someone in the county, or under the unincorporated area, or wherever they are. It tells them, hey, because of this agreement, this first responding group, whether it's police, fire, or whatever, will go to that particular entity. So all that database is all put into place, and you have to abide by that. And again, you're obligated to follow that unless you choose to get out, and you can. And I just told you, resolution, 30 days, you're out, and you're on your own, and you don't do whatever else you would want to perform. So what does it talk, and I think, Mr. Herring, you had talked about, you showed a slide, and if I was told correctly, it had the, what was it, $200,000 that the city pays, or was it $300,000? Okay, $329,000 that the city pays, and $67,500 that the county pays. Now, I want to try to keep this apples to apples, okay? And so if you have a call in one of these areas, who dispatches you? Today, the county does. And we have on the agenda a interlocal agreement that says beginning 1/10/1 of this year that you will pay the county $10,000 going forward per year for those services. Let's think, and then if you would move that slide, go to the next slide. Let's make some assumptions. I don't know when the McLendon-Chisholm Fire Department came about. Anybody help me there? 74, okay. And you were getting dispatched by the county at the time? Probably, who knows? These are assumptions, folks. These are not hard numbers. I'm gonna say it again, these are assumptions. Let's say from 1980 to 1989, the county decided, you know what, we're gonna charge McLendon-Chisholm $3,000 a year to dispatch your police and your fire. Well, you don't have police, but to dispatch your fire department. Over that 10-year period, that'd be $30,000 worth of revenue that the county would have received if we'd have been paid. Let's assume between 1990 and 1999, we bumped that to $5,000 per year, raised it on you. Then during that 10-year time frame, you would have owed us $50,000. And you all, I don't have to point out, the right-hand side, you paid nothing. From 80 to 89, from 90 to 99. Let's kick it up in 2000 to 2009 and say we went to $7,500 and we asked for that. That's $7,500 in that 10-year, $75,000 in that 10-year period. You didn't pay us anything. A more recent time frame, 2010 to 2018, we've asked you in this particular contract to pay us $10,000 for that amount, for those services. That's $80,000 that you would owe us for that time frame. The most devastating thing is maybe not that we've foregone $235,000, but get this, for 38 years, McLendon-Chisholm has paid nothing to Rockwall County for dispatch services. I made up those numbers. Don't forget what I said. I made up how much money it would cost per year. It could have been $2,000. It could have been $2,500, $2,750, whatever you want to throw in there. My point is really just basically for 38 years, the sheriff's office has dispatched. Why did we do it? When did you get taxes, Mr. Donovan, or maybe some of you guys know? When did you start? 2010. You didn't have any money prior to 2010 other than some fees and fines and building permits and things of that nature. You didn't have any money. You darn couldn't have paid that. And we were all paying less for the amount of service that we have that we pay to the volunteer fire department at that particular time. That's dispatch services. You gotta have that if you're gonna be in the fire business. So that's apples to apples, I think, okay? The next thing would be, you gotta have equipment. You gotta have radios, and you gotta have some kind of a network to make those radios work that are out there. Prior to our most recent cutover, we had some really bad communications in this county, really bad. We're very fortunate we haven't lost first responders, fire, police, or whatever. We knew there wasn't any service, radio service out in the southeast part of the county in the unincorporated area when we had the tornado to go through, and we've mentioned that to you and talked about that. We know that Rockwall PD, the terrain along the lake, makes it very difficult for them to be able to communicate. And again, Jim, you're in that business. You know what it takes to make that happen. And people were talking about if it's out in the belt or if it's a man down, you know, that's the coverage that we want in this area. We didn't come anywhere near that kind of stuff that was on there. So I'm going to show you what it costs, and we talked about it before, about a radio network to go up. So if you look at that one, the next slide starts with a radio consultant. We brought in a group called Black and Beach that worked with us, and they helped us hammer down our contracts between Motorola and Harris when we went through that bidding process. And we got those fees down about $3 million. But we paid them $767,000 in order to perform that, as well as stay with us for 3 years that we've been building that network, being sure that all the towers were erected correctly, all the electronics were done, watching Harris Communication all the way along, being sure that what we had. And stay on the Rockwall side for a minute with me, if you would. Then you look at radios and infrastructure. $8,337,587 is what we pay for radios and infrastructure. We had a contingency that we spent of $356,000, $356,809. So a total of, I don't even know what it says, 9.3, 9.1? Help me, somebody, I can't say. 461, yeah. 9.461, okay. Who paid that? Residents of Rockwall County. Residents that live in the city, residents that live in the unincorporated area. Those are ad valorem taxes that we have saved and put back. Good news about that 9.461 is we paid cash for it. So we saved, I think the county got a lot of money by having to go through that. Remember when we talked about maintenance cost and we said the county's going to buy all this equipment and going to put it in out there for you, But you know what, going forward, the cities are gonna have to pay maintenance on this equipment. And the way we did that, we said there was 800, and you try to stay with me on this, 846 pieces of equipment that we use, whether it was portables or mobiles or some other different types of equipment. They had 846 was the total count for everybody. Remember, we didn't count the EMS people, but we counted all the cities and everything else. There are cities that bought radios for their streets and streets and water departments and all that kind of stuff. We only supplied for first responders. So yes, this is police and fire. It's not just solely fire. So I'm making that no. But 846, and we delivered 28 units. Hopefully we have already today. 26, 28. We're working on that, okay?
So it's 28 or 26?
We have a total of, I think it's 26 radios altogether. We still have a couple that were short, but I have my
might
notes.
be one or two pieces of units that we'd already put in volunteers, kind of whatever. But all I'm trying to do is to support some of these documents, some of the costs out here from the expenditures. No city paid anything. Because I have those numbers up there does not mean that you owed us anything for that. All I'm trying to say is 846 units, you got 26, that comes out to about a 3.31%. Okay? So I just went through those numbers and said, you know what could we account to McLendon-Chisholm? Because somebody's going to look at that and say, you didn't give me $9.4 million. We only got 28 radios. So I wanted to reduce the magnitude of that expenditure and tell you really kind of what McLendon-Chisholm got out of the deal, okay? And so radios about 275,000. That contingency is about 11 for you, so about $313,000 would have kind of been the gift, if you would, that you got. Everybody else got the same thing based on the numbers that they had. But let me tell you something. If you had to go buy radios, and you didn't have somebody buying 846 of them, and you didn't have somebody buying the system that we did, that number would have been far greater. Now, you can buy cheaper equipment, much cheaper equipment than what we bought. But let me tell you something, the federal government has not mandated, but they've asked in the long term that first responders migrate to what they're calling a P25 radio network. And all that P25, what I know means is that Motorola units can talk to Harris units, where in the past they couldn't. And that blocked everything, and the government said, that's a bunch of BS. People should be able to communicate, because we're in a society now, we have terrorist threats in Dallas County and in Garland. We've got them everywhere. So we want everybody to have a P25 radio. That's what we'd like for you to have. And you know what? That's what the residents of this county deserve, are P25 radios that puts us at the forefront and lets us know we've got the best thing out there right now, and we can accomplish whatever we need to communicate with Garland. And our guys are saying they've talked to people, talk from Austin back here, and they know they can talk to DPS, and they know they can talk to the FBI, and all those kinds of things. So if you take those, and here's the little slam, buddy, okay, bear with me, the next slide. Look, Rockwall County, 9.6 million, 67.5, a total of 9,763,000. On the McLendon-Chisholm side, the 313,000, which you didn't have to pay, but you are paying the 200,000. So, you know what? What Jim Herring put up there is 1,000% correct. The $329,000 is exactly what the city paid to the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department, or whomever it was at that time. And the 67.5 is exactly the amount of money that we pay. But you know what? That's a snapshot. That's 1 year, one look at what we got. I'm telling you, we the county, and I'm not looking for applause, we busted our butts for 4 years to bring on a system and spend and got the best system out there available for $9.7 million. And in one scenario, you look at it and you say, hey, you ain't paying enough money. And I want to say, that's not the whole picture. Everything that was presented and all these other statements are kind of right. Well, they can't be kind of right. They're right, okay? But they don't have the whole picture. And you know what? You can take that one off and go to the last one. There's nothing on this. We're going back to a blank screen again. But you know what? Everybody in that green and light green could give a flip about how much money Rockwall County paid and McLendon-Chisholm paid. You know what they want? Public safety. They want fire protection. They want other things that make them feel safe in that particular area. We, and I have tried to stay 100% out of your business. I've been invited down 2 or 3 times. Only one time I invited council to come north, and Scott, you came up and you presented to us there. Reason being, it's not our position to tell you folks what to do. You're elected by the citizens within this city to represent them, okay? You've signed an agreement that says you're going to take care of those people out there in the unincorporated areas. Now, 2013 was the last spread of the sales tax dollars that we had received. That's when we were paying cities and didn't really have anything to drive a stake down the ground and say, this is how we're going to divide it. It was averaging about $300,000 a year income. Today, that's a little more. It's maybe closer to 400. So don't quote me on that, but it's grown. It's more than 300, okay? And we're trying to figure out how in the heck are we going to do that. So to give you the basic idea, and I think we went over this with Mr. Orchard and, were you there, Scott? Yeah, Scott was there, and Orchard and Steinhagen were there. And we talked about how we were going to do it, and we initially said $10,000 across the board for what we call readiness fee. Everybody got 10 grand, okay? There went 50,000 of the 300. Then David went through and he looked at how he would split up the rest of the $250,000, and he came up with a formula that he looked at the population of each of, now we're talking about the unincorporated areas. So that means he had to go through and count houses and make all kinds of assumptions and things, but there wasn't anything better to go by, okay? So he did that, and so he divided, so that 65% is applied to the population, 20% is applied to the mass of land that you have to cover, okay? And then there was 15% that he allotted to the number of calls that come in those different fire districts. One of the great things I think that you mentioned earlier in some of your conversations, Mr. Aaron, is that, and I think my numbers are correct, there were something like 600 and, I've got it written down somewhere. number of calls that were taken, over 600 some odd calls that were made, and to the, let me get myself in trouble if I keep going with this one. I thought it was 600 calls that were made, fire calls that were made, and that was for the county. And of those 300, over 50% of them were McLendon-Chisholm. Now, I've not seen the detail and done the investigation you have to talk about where all these calls and why did people go. But looks like you've got some information that better describes that. But there's a lot of calls that are coming in and for various type of reasons that go in. So we need an answer. We have tried to, like I said, stay out of your business, let you run the city the way you want to. We've asked you at every time you've made a decision that affected the unincorporated areas, we've either asked you to do something or we've done something to cover those individuals, okay? And I mean, we've done everything from gotten away totally from a interlocal agreement with you folks to a completely standalone contract with the fire department, the volunteer fire department, McC, I guess, on this. But we're in the same box you're in. It's budget. This isn't going to change our tax rate. We know that what that's going to be, and we're not telling, but we will on the 11th. But we know what kind of monies that are now in that fund, and I'm here to tell you that 2013 is when this was last done, and Mr. Magnus has completed his updated, and that's about a 5-year refresh, if you would. Maybe it should be done annually. I don't know. There's a lot of work involved in it. But we're ready to propose a new number to all other municipalities. Just in case you don't know the others, I can call those off. There they are. Faith currently, or in last year, received $94,000 of that 300, based on that formula that I gave. Heath, $17,250. McLendon-Chisholm, $67,500. Rockwall, $58,250. And Royce City received $63,000. So those are the 5 entities. It's kind of the plan that we went through, how we decided to make that up. We revisited that. I think that the court will make some kind of decision to reassess those numbers, and hopefully we'll be back soon to tell you that the number's going up, the number's going down, the number's changing. That's the way to say it. That number's changing, and we'll bring that to you. So please give us direction. We are going to charge $10,000 for dispatch services. You asked me, and I'm going to say it right here in front of every one of you, that number, and I think we talked about this before, was arrived at by the sheriff's office. Okay? The only other people we've talked about this, the only people we've dispatched for is Royce City. And Royce City is paying for one full-time person now. I don't know, that's in the $50-something thousand range or whatever. But that's kind of out of my purview or the court's purview. It's whatever the sheriff says his costs are going to be. So if you want to protest that, and I hope you don't, but if you do, that's the guy you need to go talk to, okay, for that. But I need to know when that phone rings, 10-1, are we going to dispatch or are we not going to dispatch? No threats whatsoever, folks. But let's talk about reality. And the reality is that dispatch ceases on 10/1. I've visited with some of our TAC officials in Austin this past week and said, hey, we need to have an agreement. And what happens if we don't have an agreement? You don't dispatch. Okay? I'm telling you that the Rockwall County Commissioners Court has not made that decision. I'm telling you that's my recommendation to the Commissioners Court if we do not have a signed document on or before 10/1, okay? That one, you didn't want somebody telling you what to do, but let me turn this around. You're the one that needs dispatch. I have dispatch. You're asking me. Don't tell me, okay? Pretty much the same situation that we had. So please don't be offended. Let's run a business. Let's take a deep breath and solve this thing. I'm telling you. If there weren't emotions involved in this, I believe any one of the 5 of you, including the mayor of 6, could sit down in 1 hour, make a decision on what to do by looking at the facts. But we've gotten way off out in the weeds, folks, okay? So anyhow, that's the dispatch. Number 2 is the agreement, the interlocal agreement between the county and the city, which says we'll pay out of this fund that $67.5. That's what it's going to say. It can be revised quickly as soon as we get those numbers and we get a signed document back from you. Says you want us to do this. I'm going to push and push hard, and other people have too. I'm not the only one. The judge, the commissioners, they know that you need additional money for that, and we're going to take care of that, okay? So we got to have that done. I don't care if this thing reads McLendon-Chisholm Fire Department or McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. What I want you to have is a fire department. But I want you to remember where I started a long time ago. You've already signed a document. Like it or not, get out of it. You signed a document that you're going to go out there whether they pay or whether they don't pay. Get out of it if you don't want it. Make that move. But right now, you're obligated to go into those areas and make those calls. And like I said, don't look at them as city. Look at them as a fire district, and you have that responsibility and take care of it. So, you know, make whatever changes you want to about who that department is. That agreement, I think, still looks at we pay the city. The city has a contract on file with McLendon-Chisholm. We want to protect you. So you're going to have a contract with them if that's the way you choose to do it. You're going to have a contract with them because we're going to give you the money, and it says in the contract, you're going to give the money to the volunteer fire department. Okay? And then they will sign, the chief of the volunteer fire department will sign, and the mayor, or the whomever you choose to be the designatee to sign that agreement. But sign those agreements for us, get this done, and then go look at the details and get under, you know, the net and see what you find or don't want to find or whatever to make it work. Like I said, I've got confidence in you. You're going to do it. You know, I'm a procrastinator. I'll stop. Yeah, I'll take questions, whatever. Yes, sir.
First one is, what's the services that were, the 67.5, what are we required to provide for services to Fire District 22?
That if you get a fire call in Fire District 22, you'll make that call anywhere in Fire District 22, and that if you get a call for assistance from another community or another fire district, that you'll respond to that.
Okay, so if we chose to respond to that area with a all volunteer force, that meets the letter of your intent?
We don't have anything in there that says volunteers, permanent, whatever. We ask you to have a fire department.
Okay, so.
And we know, yeah, and we know too that there are hours that you probably can't respond. Or there may be hours that you can't respond. And there's no time limits. That's something you're gonna have to answer to, the people in Fire District 22 if you're not getting there quick enough. But we don't demand anything about you gotta be there in 2 minutes and 38 seconds, or those requirements have never been there to my knowledge at all. And I don't think they should be, because you're gonna be probably volunteer or whatever, I shouldn't say that. But it may take you a little bit longer to get somewhere than somebody else. But I hope that better.
That means that a volunteer would be acceptable, that would meet the requirements under the guidelines of what we've signed,
Yes.
as long as they would respond out there.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
so then, that brings the very next question, it has to do with mutual aid. So in mutual aid, when we go to Roy City to provide support there, it also means that they provide mutual aid to us when we have a problem, we don't have a fire department. Our big problem about why there's no mutual aid with the Fire District 22, they don't have a fire service to provide mutual aid back to the city. So we're basically covering the cost with our current fire department, the structure we have, because we're in manned service. We're getting a smaller portion from the county, and so the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm are paying a much larger portion to provide full-time services from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so we've already established that we don't have to have a full-time force. We could go with an all-volunteer force, and we would still meet the intents of your requirements, is what you said.
Yeah, to my knowledge, and I read it again today, and I have a copy of it, and I think some of you probably have it too, the mutual aid contract, and I don't remember anywhere in there, Jim, that talks about, any of those specific requirements. The only thing that I think you'd get close on and maybe get challenged would be if another fire district, and remember, when we get down to those fire districts, that's 5 fire chiefs sitting down with a map of Rockwall County and saying, you know what, I can get there quicker than you. I'm gonna go out in the unincorporated areas. Everybody knows you gotta take care of their cities, okay? But they may change this, that, and the other. But if you get maybe 4 fire chiefs from these other cities that say, hey, that ain't good enough, or, they may challenge your chief, whoever that is, whether it's a volunteer chief or a city chief or whatever, they may want to work out something there, tweak that better, okay? But that's kind of out of our hands, because what we do is kind of ceremonial follow what they've outlined as they're the experts, they know where they can get quickest to all these different points, and they draw the lines, and, we say, there's the fire districts.
Okay, so then the next point is that if it doesn't matter whether it's volunteer or manned fire department, and you've said that the time's not really a requirement there, is the requirement for our fire department to be first responders? Or can they be basically second responders if called by EMS to go to an EMS situation?
I think that's a city call. I think that's something that you're gonna have to decide here. But because the call from the requesting city is gonna be fire, I need fire. Or they're gonna say, I need, when you don't have police, or I need your road guy, or your city manager or something to come over and help, or whatever. Those, all requests for mutual aid come from the requesting entity that we are parties with. Within your own fire district, we're asking you to make fire calls. I'm not addressing if you go out if there's a car wreck, or if there's a heart attack, the call comes as a heart attack, who goes on that. But I'm speaking for Dennis Bailey, Commissioner in Precinct 3 only. I think I have confidence in saying that I believe the other people would agree with me, you know. But our focus is fire.
Okay, I appreciate that. I have one more question. And it goes back to your very first slide that you had about the cost of dispatch over those years. And so I would say if we went back and took a look at how much additional funding we were paying above and beyond to cover Fire District 22 from the citizens of McLendon-Chisholm, it almost offset what you were paying, we would have paid for dispatch.
Well, did the city pay anything back then?
Okay, oh, no, back in 2013, you got that one slide with
Oh,
it?
13, not
No,
1980?
I can't-
1980?
No,
Were you paying them for 80? Were you paying them in 1990? Were you paying them in 2000? I don't think you were.
No.
I don't think you've been paying until just a recent time.
2013.
Yeah, so only 5 years.
Yeah, well, just going back to 40, so.
Yeah.
Get your numbers together in the last 5 years. So, in 2013, the county paid 23,000, we were paying 48,000. So it already, at that point, we were paying more and covering also the Fire District 22. And so, 2014.
You were paying how much in 13?
48,000 was the city.
Hang on just a second. Hang on.
No, wait a minute, no, that's right, that was the county.
Yeah, I started second, and we paid
It
the
was
same
23.
amount.
You're right. It doesn't go, it didn't start going up until 2015.
What were you paying in some of those earlier years?
23 and 57, so they're
So
actually.
I'm paying 48,
Yeah.
so I get credit
Mhm.
for those.
But then going forward, in 2015, you paid 67.5, and we paid $199,211. So if you wanted to, you're talking about, because you brought up the chart there where you showed where you were, if you had charged us, we would have owed you. But if we had charged you for what we were paying for it would offset that, is what I'm just getting at.
I get it, but I won't get back as far analyzing props and things that go up in pieces of it. I mean, I'll go back to my radios and all that. And that's not
Well,
the
the
issue.
ratio's with everybody, so you can't just say that just with the Chisholm thing, because every city and every part of the county.
Like I said, I think that we have gone way over the budget, and we totally disagree on those statements about who owes water, who's
Well,
ahead.
I can say that, I said from the very beginning, I believe that we only need a volunteer fire department. And I believe that if there were a true volunteer fire department, I don't care where they go, because then the funding will cover them to go to Fire District 22, cover the cost of them being able to go out and do mutual aid requirements. That's not a problem. The problem that I had was that we were paying a substantially much more amount of money for the city, and they were using the assets. It's like if you hired an employee to come work for you for 8 hours a day, but they were spending 4 of those hours a day at some other employment, and you were paying for it. And so that's the problem that we've had.
In those particular snapshots, you may have me, but, you know, let me open up that fruit basket and start talking to you about police departments.
Commissioner, can I address both of you on this?
We need to stop.
Yes.
Thank you.
You've not done anything wrong, it's not to disrespect anybody.
No.
You have brought some very good points. You brought some arguments up, but I'm gonna clear some air here, because I'm listening to people pick at the essence of what a fire department is, okay? And this has gotten out of hand, all right? You explained a little bit about the cost. It's very clear in the agreement, what a definition of a call is. It doesn't matter if it's a EMS call, or an auto accident, or a rescue, or an actual fire, false alarm fire, fire to be extinguished, potential fire situation, or an emergency. We've forgotten what a fire department is, okay? I've spent many a night out there working night shift as a cop with my lights and siren going, changing a tire for somebody broke down on the side of the road. That's not my primary job as a cop. If that fire truck had not rolled out there and got behind me, I might be dead. There's a history of officers getting killed trying to do the right thing for a citizen. It wasn't their job. But if it wasn't for the fire department putting a big truck behind me, I could have died. Been many a night, I felt the air go by me when a car got too close. Okay? They are going to respond to calls we don't agree with. That's what a fire department does. To say that they go out there and on an EMS call, I've had many a day as an officer. My job is not to save somebody's life by doing CPR, but I'm trained in it. And I've been out there and done CPR because I beat the ambulance and the fire department there. But damn glad the fire department showed up before EMS did, because I'm one guy. I can't keep doing CPR for 30 minutes because my ambulance got called away to a different city.
Let me ask y'all.
So there are things they're going to
I do
do
have a question.
we don't agree with.
Scott, I really do.
I'll say.
Okay, so one of the things that was discussed was about grants and all that,
A little closer.
Okay, one of the things that's been talked about is grant issues, and I did have a conversation with Emily over at the Texas A&M Forestry. That's where the MCBSD gets their grants from. And so one of the things that she mentioned was there's like 5 components that equals their rating on how they get their grants, like a line of items that they have to meet. And one of the things that's required, because MCBSD gets primarily most of their grants from there, okay? And so one of the things that she was saying is that to be eligible is that you would be the designated primary 911 protection area. So if we switched being the, for MCFR to be Fire District 22's first responder instead of MCBFD, that could affect MCBFD's grants. So are we saying that we would change that, or is MCBFD?
That's not a question for me, I don't think.
Well, they said that we would have to contact you because you were the commissioner's court.
For what to answer what question?
To who would be the responder for Fire District 22, because all the chiefs got together last year, remember?
Yeah.
And they said which district they were into, or which area they were going to take care of calls and all that.
Yes, sir.
And so I just don't want to I want to make sure that we're covering all our bases, that we're not affecting them from getting their grants if they were choosing to do their own, continue on MCBFD and their.
Well, I think you can only probably have one, I don't know, but my guess is you can only have one fire department responding in a fire district. Now, you could have ESDs that are all kinds of circles around up there that are not a part of, that fire district, because they choose to, do their own taxing and pay their own fire departments.
This one is regarded, it's like there's 5 components of how they rate, when they get their grants. And one of them is to be like the 911 response department. So I don't want to hinder them from getting their grants.
Then that question is going to be made by Jim Knickerbocker, who is the county 911 coordinator. But let me tell you what he's going to do. He's going to go to COG and talk to COG, and they're going to, COG is going to then probably call those parties together that are responsible for answering fire calls and says, who's first responder? And it seems like, yes, if they're not a first responder, then they may not be eligible for some funding. So you probably need to keep that in mind if you want to.
I was just thinking an idea, if they handle a portion of Fire District 22 and we just handle our city limits, and that way they can still be able to be in line with their grants. It just affects them just within 12.5 miles of their area. But they would still be the first responder for Fire District 22.
If you declare that you're not going to respond in that area, and somebody else says, I will take up that responsibility, then we're right back in the driver's seat where they need to be a first responder for that area. That make sense?
Well, also, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't there, but whenever you had the districts, it was 22 and 23. Do you recall that? Okay. Well, anyway, it was just a thought I'm wondering if we can break up the districts. 22.
That's a call by all fire chiefs
Mhm.
to make.
All right. Well, at least we talked about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
All right.
May I ask a couple questions?
Yes, you may ask the question.
No,
Oh, yeah.
thanks, guys.
Lisa, go back to the first slide, please. That one, yeah, thank you. This is gonna sound a little petty, but
That is
you're
a word.
you're a,
Call.
how'd you put it with Jim? You're a tough guy, you can handle a little
Yes,
criticism.
and I can take criticism too,
Okay.
absolutely.
In those same time periods, you went back for all the other cities, would the numbers look similar?
I can't tell you how long we have dispatched for Royce City. We have never, to my knowledge, dispatched for Heath. And you gotta keep in mind, there's, fire and PD split off sometimes. Some goes to the PD, Rockwell PD, and sometimes it goes to the sheriff's office, PD. But there's been a lot of in and outs. Wiley, was, no, Fate. We were dispatching for Fate, and Fate said, hey, you're too high. We're gonna go to Wiley. And they went to Wiley, and then they said, holy smokes. I don't know why they wouldn't know what the numbers were going in, or maybe they were there a while and we got an adjustment, I don't know. And that's something that brings up a point too we need to discuss.
Okay. But are you talking all the way back to those dates that you're talking there?
I'm talking about, Scott, I'm talking about
I
McLendon-Chisholm.
understand it, but what I'm saying is it needs to be realized that, yeah, those numbers are pretty drastic. But if you did a city-by-city comparison, I think you would see the same type of pattern for that same time period, because all of these cities have been growing. They used to be small farm towns. There was a whole lot more county than there was city.
Hey, I'll go look. I don't know if there's data there for it. No, I get your point.
Would you agree to that?
I accept your analysis, yes.
All right. Now, that's my only question on that. Now, I have two things I want clarification on. The way this contract that you sent us reads, you have a preference for MCVFD being the fire service provider for the unincorporated area,
Who said that?
because you stipulate that we have to have a contract with them.
That's, historically, and back to restoring, back where we were, we have all, up until just recently, have we had to back off of going with the city and had a direct contract with them. My comment was, it was done that way because probably I told them to put it that way. But I also told you when I talked to you, I don't care what it reads. I don't have a preference. I just need to know who is in that blank, okay? Does that
Okay.
satisfy you?
That
That may not be the wishes of the people in the unincorporated areas, and it may not be the wishes of the people in the city, but let me tell you who makes that decision. You do. You have responsibility for that green and light green, and you tell me who's gonna make those calls. Then we'll work that out.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, that, because the way the contract was presented reads, it,
Should I just let blanks in there?
no,
Okay.
I want clarification.
It's always been
Right.
a kind of to be able to contract with a nonprofit fire department. So obviously we would have, or we wouldn't have been able to fill in that last little
Right.
gap, you know, those 3 months or whatever that's on there. But no, you're the city, buddy, and you decide who goes in there, because my contract is with you. If it's you and you only, then they won't be signing the document.
Okay.
If it's them and you, then I'm gonna require you have a contract with them, because I wanna be sure that I pay you and you pay them, and they're on there too.
My second question refers to the radios. There was mention made last week during the town hall that there would be a possibility that the city would have to purchase additional radios because a certain number has already been distributed to MCVFD, and if any more were needed, we would have to purchase them. Is that an accurate statement?
Let me tell you what drives that statement, is that at the time we were putting out the RFP with Harris, we went to every entity, and at that point in time, your fire chief, who was a chief of the volunteer fire department, attended those meetings with us, and we said, you tell us how many radios you need. Because let me tell you something. When you get through telling me how many you need, it's over. There are no more. That's how many you get. And then we tried to, after everybody gave us those numbers, and they were a little high. And we went back and said, everybody please go back and scrub your numbers. Take another look for us. And then we kind of shuffled that around to some of the administration people. And they weren't that far off. But we knew what, everybody has a different opinion about what they need for spares, you know? And how many extras do I need? What's gonna happen? And so forth. But there was never a commitment made other than tell me what you need right now. And going forward, the good news, if there is any good news into that, is we secured a contract with Harris that says you can go buy those same radios at the price that we paid for them at the time of the awarding of the contract. So during that contract period, you can go buy that same radio at the same price we paid. But we never made any commitment to anybody going forward. And we had to go back, and some of the numbers that were a little bit high had to do with, somebody wanted maybe a city manager to have a radio, or a mayor to have a radio, or somebody else. And, we tried to snuff all those out and say, first responders only, please. And we found out some cities had some street in there, and water in there, and this and that and the other. So we tried to scrub it. But all along, there's been no commitment that you tell me what you get, and that's in concrete. So,
Okay, I'll ask the question again.
all right.
We have 28 radios.
28 radios have been, or 26, have been given to Mr. Simmons.
Right. Have been given to Mr. Simmons.
Let me correct that. I already had my hand up there before. After, as soon as I said that. We have already started with the volunteer fire department, putting some of those on their trucks, and getting those ready. Because, not only did we buy those radios, we bought you some station alarming systems that go in there as well. So it, who's the person you talk to on the internet, the little box, and you say, Lexus. Doesn't Lexus talk to you when you get a call or something and tell you?
Through bangers and radios.
Well, then,
We don't have station alert systems, we have boxes for the stations.
okay, they haven't installed yet?
They're in station,
They're
but
in-
not as a station alert system.
Okay. So, there's more things to that, but, you declare to this community, okay? And we have, first of all, you never own those radios. Those radios are never yours, first of all.
Okay, that's fine, what? my
So I have
question
the
is-
ability to say, you know what? I'm gonna cease that contract and you send me the radios back,
Mhm.
okay?
Commissioner, do the radios contingent on who the responding fire service is?
I mean,
I
I
guess that's-
splitting sheets again, you know?
I'm kind of listening to the discussion.
I know where you're going. And-
They're obligated to Fire District 22.
Not according to the contract.
Could be, Herman, yes. You could look at it that way. Pardon?
Not according to the contract. Contract is with the
McLendon-Chisholm.
citizen.
That's correct. And that agreement that you signed to take those also had in there that they would be given to the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department. The interoperability radios that were given to you was written such that the volunteer fire department gets them. You're late to the game. Right now, you technically, in my thinking, you don't get any radios. Because at the day we said, tell me how many radios you want, you didn't need any. You didn't have a fire department. You still don't have one today. I got my numbers from these people. The only reason there's that technical clause in there that we have to worry about, Scott, and say whose is only because I have to have a contract with somebody that I'm giving those radios to. Okay? And the contract that you signed said that was your department. Go look at those.
So it was back in Harris, that was a good contract for that.
I'm gonna wake up tomorrow
It's
night.
like 2014,
Ma'am?
2012, what was the year? It was a few years ago that you were able to accomplish that, right? The Harris
I
contract?
think 16, we started back in 15, but it took us about a year to sign the agreement, get all that done. There's a whole lot of things
Well, I was just.
that we need to look at. I will verify that for you, Scott, and send over that particular agreement, the one that you said that the city would pay maintenance for, talks about how many radios you also got and where those went. And I felt like or thought that every one of those contracts had in them something to do with the volunteer fire department.
Because your expectation was for us to go into,
Not expectations, at the time that those.
because that was on the fire department at the time.
Yeah, and only
So,
came in town.
just to throw this out here, just to make sure I'm clear. So if, MCVFD, were to do their own thing, and we were to do our own thing, are they gonna be charged the $10,000 or is that?
In all respect to you, and Mayor, you backed me up on this. I didn't want to come down here tonight and talk about the technical terms, because we both talked about that. If you start getting back into, the agreement, like you've asked, that was signed a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, folks, I'll research those for you and get an answer. But I don't want to stand in front of this mic and that camera right over there and tell you something wrong, okay? I don't want to do that. And I asked that prior to coming here. Please, we've had a lot of time to ask these questions, research these things, look at these contracts, and I hope that, maybe we've already kind of gotten that question. But if we
Commissioner, I can address that to the council. I had a conversation with Commissioner Bailey prior to him coming to this particular special meeting. And the items number 7 and number 8, the interlocal on dispatch and interlocal on fire protection, that is how they are written. Now, the only thing is the name on there as to which department responds is the only thing negotiable at this point. Is that not correct on what we
to do, excuse me, the county will know what to do when the city decides what it's gonna do. Okay? We have some things that we've had to go ahead and sign, like that maintenance.
Right? You paid it in cash, you said. I don't think that we want to exclude that we're trying to get another buck for free or anything.
Yeah.
But, so I just want to make sure I'm clear, is that, so we're going to pay $10,000 for another set of radios?
Who's gonna be the first? Services.
I'm trying to figure out what the cost.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that, you know, are we paying an additional fee or not?
The only fee you're gonna pay is for dispatch services, and that's $10,000 a year. And I thought of this a while ago when you were asking something, Scott. I wanna make this clear. I remember one of the contracts that was sent over, folks kind of lined through it and made some changes to that document and sent it back. And part of it had to do with, you really wanted a freeze, I think it was, on that dispatch service for a couple of years or something, and then you would escalate it. Or there was something to that. It was struck it out and some.
Yeah, it was an increase.
And so I took that back to the sheriff's office, and they're not the bad guys, but they say, we negotiate those every year. And so, we're not gonna give a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, we're not gonna do anything else. We're gonna tell you before the budget time, how much they're gonna ask you to pay them for dispatch services. And if you don't like that, Forney can do it, Terrell can do it, Mesquite can do it, Garland can do it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that can do that for you. So, you know, you can shop that if you want to.
Now, council understand, if that's a stance that does come up, to use somebody other than what's been presented for dispatch service, that also means the radios go away. Because I can tell you some of those other agencies he mentioned do not use the same radio service. That means the expense of purchasing new radio. And I don't know on the fire side if the cost of the radio is different, but I carry the radio he's talking about for my daily duties, and they're in the tune of about $4,000 of radio per individual. I don't even know what the ones on the trucks cost.
Well, let's go one step at a time, and let's decide where you're going, what the council wants to do, and then let's go back and look at what we've already signed, what we've done, what we need to clean up, what we need to change, and we can work through those. But
I agree. I think Commissioner Bailey's been very gracious, because we're trying to nail him down on specifics, but we can't make decisions ourselves.
Right.
We keep kicking this can, and if you can't tell, we will talk about something until the end of times, as long as it prevents us from making a decision, and I feel like that's what we're doing here. You've provided all the information we need an hour ago. You know, we'll continue doing this. There's talks of volunteer. If I recall, Mr. Aaron, you voted for the SAFER grant. Is that correct?
I also stated, I was on a video teleconference, and I made it abundantly clear to everybody that what was gonna happen with SAFER grant, if we did that, it precluded us, we accepted that SAFER grant from actually hiring MCVFD as a fire
And it did
department.
not. So
If we hire one
My point
person,
is that-
how do we
my
hire
point is
personnel?
that it just,
Can I answer your question?
no, I didn't ask you a question. I made a statement. That you voted for the SAFER grant.
You asked me if I voted for the SAFER grant.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
the
did.
answer, okay, the answer is yes.
So let me answer your question. Let me fully answer it. It's your question. You asked me a question.
And you answered it.
All right,
It's a yes or no.
gentlemen,
Thank you.
gentlemen, it is the way you phrased it. Go ahead and finish what you have to say. Go ahead and finish, Mr. Aaron.
You asked me a question if I had voted for the SAFER grant. I stated before I voted for the SAFER grant that I didn't agree with it because it would preclude us from hiring. If we hire our own personnel, we won't have funding to hire MCVFD as an entity. Is that not the case? And so after it was over with, everybody else agreed, when that agreement was made, what difference was gonna be made? I was the fifth out of 4 people. Four of the people voted for it, so I voted with them. But that's not what I would do.
But it just,
Hold on, I need to stop out there for a minute. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the time. They're gonna
Any
discuss
other-
it. If you can remain for a few minutes, I would
Absolutely.
ask you if you could for me, sir.
No, I will. I'll be here.
But I want to excuse you from standing there while
Hey,
this
I'm
discussion
fine.
goes on.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Glenn, if you need to respond to that.
Thank you.
Throw a bit into it, just, I think our indecision is a weakness.
Okay.
Mr. Hammond, I know you're in the military, but it's in your career. I can't imagine this would have flown in any of the units you were in. The fact that we will not make a decision. And we can work out the specific nuances of the deal, but we have to make a big decision first. And that's what's on the agenda later, which is, are we gonna go for merger? Or are we gonna go for a standalone? I think the numbers point very clearly in one direction, but the whole notion of an all-volunteer is off the table. It's not even a consideration at this point. How we respond to the county, sure, that's out there, that's how Terrell does it, when we brought that up. Terrell has a paid department, they have an ESD department, volunteers. But I just feel like we're creating this whirlwind of question marks and avoiding the reality that it's time to make a decision. I think we've pushed this about as far as it can go.
All right, so let me respond to both of you on this. We started talking about item number 8. We also got into some discussion about item number 7 because both of those deal with Commissioner Bailey, and he kind of explained both of them. What I'm going to ask is if I can get a motion to table both of those after we discuss item number 9. And then we will come back and make a decision on both of those. Do I have a motion to table 7 and 8 until after we discuss item number 9, which is the agreement, or the possible agreement of talking about a merger between the two, or about fire protection and emergency services? Do I have a motion for that?
Make a motion to postpone those votes until.
To table
We have to
7 and
decide.
8 until after 9.
We have to decide.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will say,
Okay, all in favor to table 7 and 8 until after we discuss number 9? Aye.
aye.
All opposed? Nay, or aye?
Nay.
Okay, nay, aye, okay. All right, so we want to go back and talk about number 8 then, because that's what we were on. So do I have a motion to discuss the interlocal agreement on fire protection?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I move that we table number 8 and number 7 to next week's agenda.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
All right, there's a motion to table those two until what, next Tuesday, the 11th, is that correct?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Discussion.
Sorry, it's open for discussion.
Well, I'd just like to say that, well, I echo the feelings of Councilman Bloom here. I mean, the lack of being able to make a decision, just absolutely, I find it rivetingly incompetent. And you know, if the rest of the council members think I'm calling them out, then I am, okay? It's incompetent for us to sit up here. We're supposed to be setting policy and guidance. We're not supposed to be running the intricate operations of all of these pieces. We have to trust our staff. We have to trust the people who are working for us and in conjunction with us. And I personally just want to make this comment. I think we're being terribly incompetent, pushing this can down the road. It's a decision that needs to be made. I'm embarrassed for the city. I apologize to the county.
All right, is there any other discussion or comment? All right, there's a motion and there's a second to table 7 and 8 until next Tuesday, the 11th. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Hey,
All right, it's a 3-2 to table those two until next Tuesday. Moving on to item number 9. Excuse me. All right, 5-minute break. It is 8:30. 36. Commissioner I've had 3 pieces of sausage today, and I'm not going to get
There's something I'm not supposed to do, I guess. I didn't get the entire conversation, that everybody except for the computer. Oh, yeah, that's right. My taxes go up.
Hey, Mike.
You're right. Yes. Yeah,
As I see him, the only difference between a house contractor and orthopedic surgeon is the tools are small.
right.
You know, because today we put plates and screws and all that stuff. You can't go get them at
For 10 bucks.
some of them, and then like, you know, when you break your arm, you run a rod down there.
Yeah.
That rod's several $1,000.
It's not just rebar.
You can't do a rebar.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, so look forward to it.
All right, it's 8:43, we can call this meeting back on. We're gonna move to number 9, agreement between the city of McLendon-Chisholm and McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department Protection and Fire Services. Discussion and action regarding the agreement between the city of McLendon-Chisholm and the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department to allow for an integrated fire and emergency response operations between McLendon-Chisholm Fire Rescue and the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department to serve the public health and welfare while promoting efficiency and effectiveness of both departments. That was requested by me. Okay? As the mayor, before I ask for a motion on the discussion of this, I'm going to speak my 2 cents now. I'm very disappointed in what's going on this side of the table. We can't make a decision about a fire service. You know, I feel for you as a citizen. You know, when I'm not on this side of the table, when I'm on that side of the table, I'm also a citizen. So it affects my safety and my family's safety. And I'm very, very disgusted that we can't sit down and do the right things. We want to talk about EMS calls, or whether 2 pennies over here, 2 pennies over there is too much or too little. You know, never in my life, I'll be 56 years old in November, never in my life have I seen what an embarrassment we've made over something that's very vital to all of our safety, which is fire protection. God help us if we had a police department. Because I'm scared to think what that discussion would be. You know, it's not hard to figure out, folks, as a council. You've embarrassed yourselves and you've embarrassed us as a whole. It's not hard to make a decision to either you guys will stand up and say, to help with the citizens, we're going to stand our own damn department up and we don't give a shit what amount of money it costs us. Or you agree to what 2 fire experts have presented. Ms. Balcom, you presented a lot of facts. And I've had a lot of discussions with the fire chief. You've yet to use him for that expertise. You're not a firefighter, nor are you a firefighter expert. But you have not once utilized the fire chief that you called an expert, that you, as part of the previous council, hired.
Bull.
Chief Simmons, would you like to answer my question? Has she utilized you in any of these presentations, any of the information she's provided to myself, the rest of the council, or the citizens?
In the beginning, yes, sir. In the end, here lately, no, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so she did use you in the beginning.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
she did. Yes, sir.
You formulated a committee. And I've had a chat with one of the ad hoc Public Safety Committee members. How much input did that committee get to use, Ms. Balcom, to any of the information provided? How much input did they give?
Define input.
Did you utilize that committee and their input on what fire service we were going to look at?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Ms. Balcom, I don't mean to embarrass you, but that's not correct.
Really?
Yes, ma'am. Because I was told by one of your committee members, you only asked.
You're dishonest, as well as the agenda. This tonight
Ms. Balcom,
wasn't supposed to be on the thing.
you are out of order because I am still speaking.
You're out of order for what
Okay.
you're doing tonight.
Ms. Balcom, as the mayor,
get
The
your.
law
facts.
says I can call a special meeting, so let's get
Say
the
that.
facts straight.
I didn't say that.
One of your committee members made it very clear, you asked 2 of your committee for input. The rest were told what you did, not asked for their input. Okay. These citizens out here, look them in the eye and tell them that you don't agree with what they've asked for. They've asked for either leave it as is and continue to use the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department, or merge the 2 departments together based on the input of 2 fire experts. And you've denied them both.
Oh, no, no,
Mr.
no, no,
Mayor.
no. You are out of line there, buddy.
Go ahead, Mr. Turnbull.
You are violating your own rules of decorum,
Okay.
and it's not your position to lecture another council member.
Fair enough.
And I expect,
All right.
and I would ask that you apologize for your behavior, because this is the 3rd time you've behaved this way.
I'll apologize to you for the comments, Ms. Balcom. Again, we are going to discuss an agreement between the 2. Do I have a motion to discuss an agreement between the 2? Mr. Turnbull, you also made a comment tonight about you would support an integration of the 2 departments if they bring you timelines. Do I have a motion to support an integration between the 2 if they can provide those timelines within a specific day?
No, sir, because that's not on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's a discussion action regarding agreement between the 2 to allow for integrated fire emergency response services between the 2.
And the agreement is attached. We have to speak about the contract that was presented.
Do I have a motion to entertain what is in number 9?
Yes, I'll move to approve the merger between MCFR and MCVFD.
The agreement, discussion and action regarding the agreement between the 2. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion, I'm sorry. All right, it's now open for discussion.
Well, I'll start. I mean, I don't, everything's been said at this point, so I'm not going to belabor it. We're in this situation because of the 3 remaining council people from a previous council. And now it's time to step up. And you wanted a city-owned department. You wanted to get rid of MCVFD. You've accomplished that. Congratulations. Let's move forward. I think the fire experts, the chiefs, who know far more about fire than the fire service, than all of us combined, have provided their input. The comparison between the 2 is such a non-starter, it's laughable. There's really no reason to consider a standalone department. We already have the SAFER grant. The notion of a volunteer department is off the table. How to handle the gap between personnel and the rest of the contract with MCVFD, want to look at that for use of their station, their equipment, that kind of thing. We have money to do that because of the SAFER grant. So they're not mutually exclusive. To address Mr. Aaron's comment earlier, by hiring personnel, that doesn't preclude us from being able to work with MCVFD in an arrangement like the chiefs presented to use MCVFD, perhaps our personnel, their equipment, their station. It's a merger. It happens over time, and they provided a great response. So I think it's time. They've given us a good option. We don't have time. There will be details to work out, but I trust them to work those out. We can be a city council instead of a conglomerate of an attempted fire chief council. I don't know what we're trying to be here, but that's where I stand. I haven't changed. I'm not going to change. I believe that's what the citizens want, and I agree with you, Mr. Aaron. We can't say that the 100, 200 people that have spoken at these represent everybody, but I do feel like the 1 to 2, if that have spoken in favor of a standalone department, certainly represent their audience as well. So I think if you want to say they don't represent people that support us or that support the notion of a merger, the ones who don't show up, don't speak up, I don't think that means everyone else is in their camp. I think the fact that no one shows up, despite repeated requests, proves that it's, again, another kind of false flag. So I hope that we can make a decision. We've created our own mess, and now it's time to fix it and move forward.
Let me echo here. You know, I know it probably goes against everything for the two guys that are actually in favor of this to speak first and then allow everybody else that's against it to go next. But, you know, we've heard a lot of questions about the radios and about additional costs and radios allocated to the MCVFD. You know, if we do this combined department, that becomes a non-issue because those radios become a joint asset, okay? So we're nitpicking over something that we can solve really easy. You know, we talk about, you know, we put ourselves behind the 8 ball again. Here we are, we're 25 days away from the 1st of October, and what happens? Well, back in June, we had to pass a resolution to fund the volunteer fire department so that we would have fire service and that we could meet our obligations to the citizens. And we did that. And that was a real positive, and I was very proud of us at that moment. But that MCVFD is in the same situation because the dollars that we allocated were, as I've told people so many times, is a cost of operations. We paid for 3.5 months. That 3.5 months is gone. Guess what? They have no funds to run calls in the city. Period. So we don't have to see the letter to know that once again we're in the situation where MCVFD could write a letter that said effective September or October 1st that we will no longer be able to service your citizens. We owe it to our citizens to protect them. Mr. Caldronia has made several statements here and on social media, and I don't like to voice out a lot on that, but he talked a little bit about the cost of fire service being probably around $200 a household per year. You know, most people pay more than that for their lawn service. I mean, a lot of people pay, you know, $100 every 2 weeks to get their lawn done and stuff like that. $200 for a year for a service that will respond if you have an automobile accident or if your child has fallen or has an asthma attack or something like that, or Lord be it some ancient old city councilman that lives on Green Hollow has a heart attack or something like that, you know, because of all the stress of this situation. But the reality of it is there is no money left. They're not going to be able to service us. If we don't make a decision and move forward, then we have basically failed our citizens. And then we need to think about maybe dissolving the city as a whole and just saying, hey, you know what? We're not capable of providing public safety, and that's the only service we do provide. So maybe we ought to just dissolve the city and give you all your tax money back. And I know that's radical. That's radical. But you know, if we're not going to provide a service, if we're not going to take action and do stuff, then why are we here? Why do we have all this overhead? I don't know. So, you know, we could dissolve the city and go to the 48-cent tax for the city of Rockwall as they come in and the service and stuff like that. But the reality of this is, I'll get back to the specific issue. This makes sense. It's always made sense. We went from a talk of we need an all-volunteer force. Then we went to a talk of everything costs too much, so we'll do safer grants. Safer grants forces into a 24/7. And I agree with Mr. Herring and several other people here, we don't need 24/7. Yet, we're not there. The metrics don't support it, but if we're going to take the safer grant money, that's where we're at. So the reality of it is there's no real upfront costs until year 4. And we get a larger coverage. To me, this makes sense. We dismiss the fact that these assets will eventually become ours. I don't expect somebody to start working on transitioning assets before they have an agreement. Okay? I think one of the speakers earlier today said we shouldn't expect that. And we shouldn't. So the reality of it is, give our blessing for the big picture, the merger, understand what that's going to cost, and let's move forward. Let's start setting some of those dates. No one's ever said that, I mean, the timeline for the transition of the assets, as long as we have an agreement that the assets are going to be transitioned, what difference does it make? It really doesn't. So we need to get rid of the conspiracy theories, okay? That fire department has served us for 44 years. They're not going to walk away. They're not going to they're not going to suck money out of the city and then go somewhere else with their toys for hire, okay? So the reality of it is, it makes sense. We need to make decisions that support the people of our city. And that's it.
Mr. Larkin, have you, well, I'll rephrase this. Can you show me where in the agreement that's attached to our agenda that this is a merger?
In the 4th paragraph, whereas MCVFD and city agreed that integration of the departments is in the best interest of the citizens of Fire District 22.
That's the whereas. Where in the document does it actually contractually require it?
Well, if there's an actual, perhaps it's an issue. And an important issue, I would get.
I think it's somewhere in section 4. I don't have a copy in front of me.
Can I read
But
section, do you mind if I read it, Mayor Pro Tem Turnbull?
Go right ahead.
Assets 4.1 ownership. Prior to the commencement of this agreement, all assets owned or directly purchased by MCVFD utilized for fire protection services shall remain the property of MCVFD. Is that what you were thinking of?
No, actually, the only thing that comes close to being a integration or merger statement is the last sentence of that paragraph, which this ownership provision shall be valid until such time the city and MCVFD reach an agreement on the integration and transfer of property and assets. However, there is nothing in here that requires that agreement to be reached. This is a 3-year contract with if this contract were actually one that specified merger and a timeline for the merger to be completed and justification for that timeline, you would have a yea vote from me. However, there are a couple other items on it that concern me. It has been stated that this contract is cheaper than anything else. And I want to ask if anybody's actually ran the numbers on this contract. Don't say, he is not supposed to be talking to staff.
Did I talk to the council?
No, you may not.
I didn't think so. You don't want to hear from me.
The quorum does state to bring stuff to staff, to Lisa specifically.
To deliver it in writing, not discuss things with them. That, again, has anybody else actually ran the numbers on this?
I didn't run the numbers on this exact contract, no.
Okay,
I did not.
because this is the contract we are here to discuss tonight. Personnel. Here are the requirements for the city.
Said 3.2.
Thank you.
Yeah.
4 full-time and 2 part-time firefighters. Now, it says a minimum of, so yes, we could staff for more, but using these qualifications or these quantities, what would it cost? Because we can't use the safety grants for these quantities.
You're reading A,
Equivalent of 6.
are you reading section A, Mayor's Pro Tem Turnbull?
3.2, section 3.2A.
This is to allow us to continue the integration of the two agencies is what we're trying to do here. If we get something along the lines here put together, then the merger agreement, or as some of you mentioned, you don't like the merger agreement, we would bring back
Yes,
before
I
council.
understand that that's your intention. What I'm pointing out is the problems with this contract. This contract, following the numbers, using your numbers from your budget of $46,000 per person plus benefits, times 4, 46,000 plus 16,129. That's not right. It's $62,129 per person. When in time you add taxes, benefits, everything else, times 4 is $248,000 plus. You then have, and since I don't know what you mean by 2 part-time, I just cut one person in half. So that's 23,000 per person plus 184,000 for taxes, 1,840 for taxes, 1,150 for workers' comp, and 1,344 for retirement, thank you, for a total of $27,334, or another $54,668. You then add the volunteer stipend using your numbers of $10,000 for the stipend and $4,188 for workers' comp for the volunteers. That's a total of $317,372 without using the safety grants.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
May I This is just a suggestion. Can you hear me? This is just a suggestion. I think the way this is worded, it's a reasonable assumption to think that we would have to vote on the agreement in the packet. I don't think you have to vote on that agreement. I think if we could just get past the point where we vote to merge or not to merge, and if you directed Mr. Simmons to merge and stay within the confines of a designated budget amount, perhaps the proposed budget amount, which I don't have in front of me at the moment, but I can get it for you. He could make arrangements to do the merger and stay within the confines of the budget that was proposed.
I have to disagree because of the way the agenda item was written and the fact that this contract is here. It's my opinion, we have to vote on this contract.
Originally, this special meeting, what was said to the staff was that nothing else would be on the special meeting but these two things, talking about the interlocal agreements with the county, and it says discussion amongst the council about the fire protection and direction. It did not mention anything about this particular contract that was gonna be on this agenda.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it has to be about this particular contract. I'm saying it just has to be about whether to merge or not to merge, because we just need a direction to move forward one way or the other so that we can even work on the details of the merger.
Well, we tried to get some items on the agenda, but that was not allowed. So we can't even focus on all the other items that we would like to discuss.
And the other thing I might suggest is your attorney is available this evening if you wanted to ask him some questions in executive. You could do that if you wanted to ask what you could vote on or not vote on.
Well, it's on the agenda, so this is the item that we are supposed to be a discussion on, and we have to vote on it.
Well, there's one more number in here that I would like somebody to explain to me. And this is 3.2.A. The city shall make payments of $33,500 4 times a year. It comes up to $134,000. What are we paying for? We have equipment, we're paying for personnel, we're paying for the volunteers. What else are we paying for?
For basically their equipment and their station and operation being able to continue that merger process, or the process for the merger. So that's basically what that would pay for, with those additional items that are out there.
But why do we need it?
Why do we need their additional equipment or their stations? Well, their stations, because it would allow us to have a house to be able to house out of and continue our operations. That's one of the biggest ones.
Okay.
And then their additional equipment that they have that we would be utilizing, and eventually those assets would come into the city.
Yeah, eventually those assets will come in the city.
Yes, sir. That's been the plan all along.
Yeah, let me ask one question, and Herman, I'm not picking on you, but I want to ask you a question. How many times have you, when you were on the other side, said that very thing? Eventually those assets will come in the city.
Well, I've probably said it a lot of times.
Okay, thank you. And we still have not managed that.
I know, that's the past. I'm trying to get us behind the past negative things and mishandling of both sides when it came to the fire department. So everybody keeps bringing up to me, as this was said before, I understand that. But my head's on the chopping block. If this doesn't work, it falls on my shoulders. So I'm the one that's stepping out there saying that, I know I said those will eventually come over. There's a process to it. And Chief Murphy has been nothing but dedicated and committed to making this a merger, whatever you want to call it. I know a couple don't like the word merger. Dedicated to make this happen. If it doesn't happen, mine's the first one I'm gonna lay across that desk and say, off of my head. It's my fault. We're just trying to, what I would like to have is direction from council is to, yes, we want this merger to happen. I'll put any wording in a document that you want that's gonna make everybody happy, with the understanding that we are committed to beginning the process of transitioning assets over once we have that agreement and that acceptance from council that the merger is the way we want to go.
Okay, you just said that you'll put any wording in a document that we want.
To make everybody happy, with the exception of understanding that, I know where you're going to want that timeline, and we.
No, I'm just saying, you just said something that's totally impossible. You realize that.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I'm trying to
I
bring this.
understand your intent, I'm just saying that.
My
again,
mistake,
you
my
stuck yourself
apologies,
out there.
my apologies. I'm
So-
taking myself out there to begin with,
All right,
trying to go down this path.
there are many other things about this agreement that there is no way I can support it. So, and again, it's my opinion, the way the agenda is, we have to vote on this agreement.
Based on that line item, can I get guidance from council agreeing to a merger or no merger? I'm asking, I don't know much about this, but based on the way that read, is that, can I not get direction from council? I don't like this agreement. To turn this agreement down and say, we agree to the merger, bring us back a document in regards to a merger or transition or integration that will make everybody happy.
Guys, hold on, Mr. Boone. As it says in the way it's worded under 9, discussion and action regarding an agreement between the city of McLendon-Chisholm and the city and the McLendon-Chisholm Volunteer Fire Department to allow for integration of fire and emergency response operation between MCFR and MCVFD. Okay. Lisa,
Okay.
the way you said something, we don't have to vote on the contract, but we can vote on the direction of moving towards the integration, not just this contract that's presented.
That is my opinion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
if I may, I'd like to speak to Councilman Turnbull's questions here concerning the wording on the dollars and all. Looking at this in greater detail and analysis now, it doesn't appear to be what I had seen prior. I agree. I would not sign this particular contract as it's written. It's too non-specific about the pay, because in a transitional phase, if the intent was to pay MCVFD until people could be hired, that needs to be articulated as such, as opposed to just paying 4 full-time firefighters and 2 part-time firefighters. All that stuff needs to be articulated. So I actually agree 100% with your evaluation that these numbers don't lend this contract to be signed. Okay? So I'm just making sure I'm showing my support for that. I do believe, however, that secondary to this contract, that we probably should go ahead and discuss the merger scenario.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just say
Go ahead.
one more thing. I agree. I mean, if you read this, the way it's worded, that action regarding an agreement between the city of McLendon-Chisholm and MCVFD to allow for integrated fire and emergency response operations, it continues. It doesn't really specify agreeing with this contract. It just says action regarding an agreement between the city and the volunteer department. I do think that could be a reasonable vote. We have to decide a general area and then get specific.
In the past, every time that we've had something attached to the agenda, we have discussed and acted on the attached item.
We changed, just for comparison, when Mr. Bailey was talking about the contract we signed with him, and we struck things out, and we changed things significantly. I think as long
That
as.
is correct, but if you want to sit here, I'm sorry, Lisa, I apologize for cutting you off. I don't think anybody wants to sit here and redraft this contract tonight.
No, I'm not suggesting you do so. I'm sorry, I just think if you could just decide one way or the other, then we could get the 2 attorneys on both sides and the 2 chiefs, lock them in that room, I'll feed them lunch, I won't let them out until they come up with a reasonable agreement with as close to we could get as a timeline. I don't know that we can get it exact, I don't think we're going to. But if we could just get them in that room and say, we're gonna merge, let's figure it out. We'll get both sides in there together, and they don't come out until they've got something that we can present to you that is reasonable. at the next meeting. I think that's kind of what we need to happen so we can move forward one way or the other. And if you choose to do stand-up, then we need to know that way so we can go for that full force as well. So I just think it's time to make go right or left.
And that's the whole point of why council members should be allowed to put stuff on the agenda.
All right, let's get past that and let's work on what we're talking about here.
May I offer a compromise?
Offer your compromise, Mr. Turner.
We need to withdraw our motion first. Don't we have a motion before that we were discussing?
Just to discuss, I mean,
No, it's discussion and action. So,
I just want to make sure.
yeah.
actually, either we have to vote it down, or you can withdraw.
Well, let's find, what is your compromise first, because he may agree to put that on his motion, he would just see if the second is.
Is anybody else willing to consider instructing Chief Simmons to stand up MCFR by October 1 and utilize personnel and any equipment MCVFD is willing to allow us to utilize to do that, while chiefs, the attorneys, as Lisa said, are locked in a room and not allowed out
Until they get the.
to get an actual contract. I agree, Chief Simmons should have been hiring people already, or at least interviewing them. I mean, we got distracted with the merger integration, whatever, instead of you focusing on standing up the department. That's fine, that's, as we said, that's in the past. This agreement has to be voted down. I think Herman will agree with me, and I think there are others that will too. What's attached? But if we want to amend the amendment to say your instructions are to set up MCFR, and that is your focus, your secondary focus is to work with Chief Murphy and get an agreement hashed out that accomplishes an integration to help you stand up the department, I'm willing to consider that. That's,
I'm a little confused on
Yeah,
that.
I don't understand what accomplishes, I mean,
I understood you in the
Seems
beginning,
like
but it sounds like you kind of
no,
changed this a little.
what I'm saying is they want direction.
Right, but what I thought you started to say and what you ended up saying was stand up. I got that point. Utilizing the BFD as the stand up at this moment while the two chiefs and the two attorneys get locked in the room to hammer out the integration. That's what you started with.
No. You made that interpretation. When I said using their personnel, they would become city personnel. You would, you could hire them if that's what you want to do, if those are the best people, if you want a contract to use their equipment or their facility to house ours for a short time until you are ready to stand, or until you have completed standing up. And by utilizing them, having a way to merge or integrate the two departments. But I am 100% in agreement with you that you cannot wait before you start moving. So that's, if that's not clear enough, then we can vote it down and put something else else on the next agenda that's clear?
I mean, and again, we're kind of like this agreement, hire the staff, we basically go ahead and take on staff and start using the staff, and we work out an agreement with MCFD to have an agreement while Chief Murphy and myself are working on the integration plan to submit back to you. I mean, to me, it seems like we're kind of going down the path, guys, go ahead and start merging together. Work out an agreement to use equipment stations and all that, hire the people in, whoever we're gonna hire, and get together and get an agreement together on the transition or the merging or whatever you want to call it, of the two agencies. Is that?
Right, but one thing that I'll point out, and I think maybe Herman would agree with, paying $134,000 a year during this integration is way overpriced when we have 3 vehicles ourselves. So, again, that's just because that number was in this document. So, and I feel for you. I do, because there is no way for us to sit down and tell you what you're supposed to negotiate. We can't tell the lawyer what you're supposed to negotiate unless we agree with it up here. And if we're gonna hash it out up here, we don't need you and the lawyer in the room, we hash it out here. So
During this, sorry.
whatever you come up with has got to come back to us, and it's possible it'll get shot down.
This seems just as convoluted as before, but we're talking about head down the road, standing down by yourself, but also kind of worked over towards maybe merging and maybe using some of their assets. We're just as vague in lack of leadership by doing it that way. I still don't see why we couldn't just give him specific direction of a merger, because you get down to all the gear, the stations, the equipment, the sale, the potential sale of equipment, the grants, all that stuff. It comes down to, all that goes away with standing it up, doesn't go away with merging. Let's make a decision on merging and give them that very, very specific direction to revise this contract, to get specific on a merger.
So are you willing to set a date of January 1 to have it completed?
Not just sitting here without any more information and you throwing out that number. No. I don't know what all's involved. I understand that he's spoken to lawyers that say there are things that take time.
Yes.
And they can't always be predicted exactly to the date. So for me to sit here based on the same meetings that we all attend and say, I'll plant a flag in January 1st, no, because that's not what the expertise of Chief Simmons and Chief Murphy are telling us. They've had those conversations.
I wish I could give you exact dates, I do, and Councilman Turnbull, I mentioned that to you, I wish I could give you an exact date, and we can't give an exact date. But if Chief Murphy and myself know that this is what the council wants, they want this transition or the integration of the two departments to come together, and we get the operations set, so we have no delay in operations, and our operation is running smoothly, our next big step from there on out is to start merging or transitioning these assets and things into the city. I mean,
Okay. I made this comment earlier, and Chief Murphy, I'm going to apologize for the way I phrased it. What I've heard in your presentations and basically everywhere is what can't be done. What I'm asking is for MCVFD to come to you and tell you exactly what they can do to be in the department and how far into the department they can be on October 1.
What do you mean by in the department? You mean integrated in?
Whatever they can give him to help stand up MCFR. Because in the final analysis, MCFR is going to be the entity. So we need to know from them what they can do. Not lawyer says we can't do this, we can't do that. What can you do? And you need to figure out whether or not that is going to enable you to stand up MCFR by October 1, or whether you have to take a different tack to accomplish that goal.
With the intention of this original agreement, that is basically what we were doing, is all staff would come into the city. And since we don't have a station and they have additional equipment, this agreement coming together would allow us to throw all our assets together to make assessments of.
There is no language in there that states that, Jim.
Okay.
It is a 3-year renewable contract that can be backed out of in 60 days.
I didn't see the backouts at it because Chief Murphy and myself has stressed many times.
Anybody
to our-
can cancel this agreement with 60 days notice.
Anybody can, not one-sided, anybody. So
Right.
council, if you decided, you know what?
Yes, absolutely.
So it was
Either side,
either side.
I didn't say that them, I said a backup. Either side can.
Right.
All right, let's,
So,
So if we change some of the verbiage in there, take some, I mean,
let's,
Go- let me
let's
go-
think about this, Chief. And Mr. Turnbull. There's hashing back and forth about this contract. Let's just take this contract as we're not gonna agree to this contract, but we give direction to Chief Simmons to get with Chief Murphy, whether it takes both their attorney and our attorney to sit down and give us a timeline and a breakdown to merge the two together. Whether or not, maybe we utilize their services in the interim, but to come back to us with that information of what the timeline is to merge the two together as one entity as the McLendon-Chisholm Fire.
and I think we attempted that with the first agreement that we offered up a couple weeks ago that had more timelines in it. It said that our plan was to integrate the two entities together, and our goal was to accomplish the transition of assets by March or April with an end date of September 30th, 2019. That was in that first agreement that we issued to you, and it seemed like that nobody really cared for that. And honestly, I like that one a little bit better because it had a little more power to it. It had a little more explanation to it than this does. So, I don't know if we look back at that, if you go back and look at that original agreement and see if that is enough information for you, kind of along the lines, I think that what Councilman Turnbull's asking me to do is, it kind of states in there is, I'm gonna hire staff, and if I hire all 15 of the McLendon-Chisholm firefighters, from the full-time staff to the volunteers, well, there's our staffing. So the city now takes on full responsibility of covering insurance and everything else, workman's comp for volunteers and the paid staff. And then they have the stations and additional equipment. We now start sharing all that. And so that money there is helping them pay for that. It's still in our initial budget that I submitted to you, the merger budget. It's not changing that number any. We still stay within that 335 or whatever it was that's in that initial budget. But we're paying them, for upkeep and things that they're continuing to operate as we bring these two entities together. That's where that $130-something, I think, that you were asking about, where it would come from. But we would take on all staff in the beginning.
Would it be more palatable to you if Simmons had budget oversight over all of it, rather than us paying MCVFD any amount of money? We pay the bills, we pay the operations costs, that sort of thing, as we're working through the merger process. Instead of writing them a check, they present us if there is a bill for something, or we just pay for it because they're us and we're them, and we're merging. So we're taking on the salaries because we'll hire the people. We're assuming that everyone qualifies and we hire them on. As operations costs occur, we take care of those within the confines of the budget that you approve, which is
The 335. All this is
335-ish.
based on that number, not increasing it or anything like that, based on that number. This agreement and the initial agreement.
I just think you could work, if we could just agree to the merger itself, then we could probably work out those details. And I'd like to see Jim have budget oversight over it anyway, rather than just writing checks to MCVFD, and I'd rather see Jim kind of be in charge of the budget.
And that was mentioned in our initial presentation, that I would have full budget oversight. I mean, it's not that they're gonna take their money and go over here in their own corner of the block and play and spend their money the way they want. We've been talking, this is us as one now, so I would still have full oversight of budget and administration and everything else. So it's not that they're gonna take this money and go by themselves. We're gonna know what money's being spent on.
I think both sides are just looking for a commitment that they want to merge. So if we want to merge, we hit the go button and they start making those transition of assets immediately.
We start making things happen. I mean, we start making
But at
things
the moment, I
pop.
think they're in a holding pattern. They can't hire people. We don't have personnel policies in place. We can't promise somebody what a position is going to entail until we know we've got a commitment that he can really hire them and we're going to take them on.
And I haven't hired anybody based on the direction of council. From back in June, council said continue moving with building up, standing up MCFR and working on a merger with MCVFD and without hiring staff. So I haven't hired staff. I've got applications. I've done my initial assessment on applications based on qualifications and all that. We've made job descriptions. So I've done all that with the exception of interviewing and hiring people. Because I didn't know where we were. But knowing that we're gonna have this merger process, if this is the way council chooses to go, then that starts immediately. Because now I know, okay, we're going down the path of merger. Next week, I'm gonna start setting up interviews. I'm gonna get the panel together and we're gonna start doing interviews. We're gonna start moving this ball. So October 1, we have people here ready to go. We may not have the station and additional equipment, but MCFR is up with the help of our neighbors of the integration of the two agencies.
So how you get there can be that you deny the motion, and then give staff the instruction to proceed with the merger process, or that you approve the motion with amendments that would indicate that you want to go with the merger process, or that you withdraw the motion and you just give us instructions as to which way to go. You don't want to muddy the waters in which, if everybody's in agreement of the general direction we're trying to go, but we just need y'all to say, go get them, and then we can. I think that's what we've been saying all night long, so.
I know there's a lot of doubt because of what has happened in the past, and I mentioned that to Lisa and Dave, you know, they're my sounding board when I'm frustrated and things that are going on. I'm reaching out there and saying, look, I know there's things that have been said in the past and haven't followed through, and discussions have fallen apart. But I stand beside Chief Murphy, and I know, and I've got to know him very well, and I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be 110% committed to this, just as I am, that we will start moving these things forward. Nobody wants to back out of this. Those guys down there know that this is what's best. They agree this is best. They want to be part of the city. So as soon as we get direction that merger is the way we're going to go, it's going to fall on me if it fails. And I'll be the first one to come to you and tell you, I failed you. But it's going to fall on me if this does not work. And I'm willing to put my neck out there and say, I feel this is what's best. Tell me to move forward and do it, and I will go and conquer, one way or another.
You presented those presentations and that you gave your opinion that this is what you believe is an ideal situation to merge.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, again, there's things that we need to discuss with the 2018-2019 budget that you proposed. We
Yes,
need to go over all those details. And, you know, again, that would have been on this agenda, but we didn't get to have that chance to discuss it. So.
We can still just, it was a proposed budget, so if you still have
Yes,
questions about it,
it's a
we will adjust it. I'm fully prepared to make adjustments to that budget as we move forward, because I made it clear in the beginning that if we were to merge, some of those numbers in the budget that I presented you would change dramatically. Some may go way down, some may come up a little bit. So we haven't got to the budget yet, but yes, I still know that we're gonna come back to the table and discuss the budget and make sure we fine tune it. This is just having the direction that council agrees that merger is what's best for this city and for this district. Then as soon as that button's pushed, I'm off like a rocket. And I know Chief Murphy's gonna be right there with me, because I know he's going to do the same thing. I mean, the man is dedicated. He works a full-time job and he's put in 6, 7, 8 hour days with me steadily. I mean, I feel for his wife. I spend more time with him than his wife does over the last 2 months. This is how dedicated she nods. This is how dedicated that man is to make sure that we meet the request of you as council, because we feel this is what's best for the community. And Chief Murphy has jumped out there and done lots of things that you as council, have requested him to do, to show that he is serious about making this work.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes, sir.
Go
I
ahead.
just have one last question. Who delivered this contract to the city to be included in tonight's agenda?
I actually had it forwarded I got it from, did I forward it to you? I don't remember now.
Mr. Murphy.
Murphy forwarded it on to her because I was not by computer, so he just went ahead and sent it on to Lisa. I think that was about a deal with my wife's name.
So are you participated in drafting this agreement?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you're okay with all of the things that I pointed out that did not seem to be?
Chief Murphy and myself talked, and I had some questions about some things, and we figured if we come to council and you say, hey, we'd like the layout of this thing, we'd like the gist of this, but we want some of this stuff to change because it doesn't make sense to us, we are both willing to go back and make those changes. So I am participating, and so is both attorneys. Both attorneys are participating too. But
You're saying both attorneys have participated in this contract?
yes. Now, we do have some, David Pastor did send us some stuff today with a few things that he would like to adjust, which I read through it and I'm like, yeah, I agree. And then was going to get with Chief Murphy and their attorney and say, hey, here's some additional things that Pastor would like to put in there.
Mr. Malone, at this point, I think it's up to you. If you want to vote on your motion, we can vote on it. If not, if you want to withdraw your motion, then we can entertain a different one, I guess. I'm not sure whether we can give direction or not, but
Well, I would like to amend my motion to include some of the topics that we've covered here. Okay. I move to approve a merger between MCFR and MCVFD and authorize Chief Simmons to make all necessary arrangements, including agreements for such a merger. For that to occur will ensure no interruption of fire protection services for the entire District 22. And to do it as quickly as possible to specify, well, to do it expeditiously. To give you oversight of the budget, set the grant, hiring, and provide us updates as you and Chief Murphy work through the details. So I believe the details should come from there. That's my motion.
All right, I have to repeat all that, but I have a second.
I will second.
We now have a motion, we now have a second. Is there any discussion on that particular motion at this point, since we've been discussing all this? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
discussion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
So are we retracting this current one?
Contract?
Yes,
Yes. So, yeah,
this one's dead.
the contract specifically, yes. My motion was specific,
To give the
with some
direction.
extra stuff in there, but to approve Chief Murphy and, or Chief Simmons, Chief Murphy to proceed with the merger.
Okay, so as we go forward with that thought on the merger, what I'd like to do is, I'd like more information. I've asked this a couple of times already. You can go back to the records and look and see that, what are our requirements under the SAFER grant? How many full-time, how many part-time people do we have to hire?
Go ahead. We've addressed that a couple times.
Yeah.
It's 6 full-time or full-time equivalent, so you could have a combination. You could have 6 full-time, you could have 3 full-time, and then any number of part-time to make up the difference, but you have to have 2 people on duty 24/7.
Okay, so
So
we don't
some-
technically have to have any full-time people.
No,
No,
you
it's
could have
only
part-time if you
Okay.
want.
Right.
As long as it equates to 6 full-time people in the hours.
So we're currently being supported by MCDFD with no full-time personnel today.
Well, they have four.
Nobody gets benefits, is what I meant.
Correct, sir. No benefits.
Under this proposal, there was 4 full-time people. What I'd like to see is if we go forward, look at how, because this has to be sustained by the city after the safer grants are over.
Right.
So let's look at this, how do we do this? I know there's been a lot of people talking about this, but there's people don't have to pay this out of their paycheck. How are we gonna cover this in the future? Let's start this fire department out based on the way that the requirements are. If we're getting by today with no full-time people, why do we need to have full-time people now? So,
Because of the safer.
don't have, no, you just said they don't have to be full-time. We can do
Paid
full-time
people.
equivalents. We can do 2, we make 1. So we don't have to pay benefits, we don't have to pay those.
Right, I think under the safer grant, are you saying 2 people manning it
2 people, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
7 days
365 days a year.
That's why, whereas right now,
Well,
what we
but
have
you can do
now,
that with part-time people.
It's a whole lot more difficult
as
for
long as
part-time
somebody
people
who's
having
24 hours a day.
committed personnel that are willing to work a minimum of 5 shifts a month, all the time.
It would be a challenge for him.
It's a challenge. I've managed part-time personnel in the fire service.
How many can you do with it? You can't do 6 part-time, can you do 2 full-time and 4 part-time? Because what I'm seeing here is, we're doing 4 full-time and 2 part-time. And what I see is that sets us up as a city to have to pay a substantial amount of money when the safer grant is gone. And so I would like to set ourselves up and also determine, because what we've already said, and Councilmember Larkin has said, that there's no real requirements for us to have 24-hour service. So if we have to have 24-hour service, why don't we do it in the most economical method, the way that we can do it, so that in the future, if it's not required, when the safer grants are done, we can cut that away. Because what we're setting up here is, in entities like cities, we set up something that will become an albatross that will be hanging around our neck for years. So I just want to make sure that as we go forward, within the bounds of what this safer grant is, that we're not being tied specifically to somebody's ideals, that we need to look at what's best for the city, not what's best for individuals. And then, as we go forward on this, I want to make sure, one of the questions about the merger is, so I know that this contract's going to be dead. I didn't understand what the $33,500 for payments was. If we're going to be merging and the personnel are going to work for the city, can't MZVFD just lease us the equipment and then we become responsible for it? We'll pay the fuel, we'll pay the insurance, we'll do all those things. There's no reason why we would pay them to maintain that equipment if it's going to be maintained by the personnel who are now working for the city. So I want to see that as an option. I don't want to see us paying them to maintain the equipment that our personnel that work for the city are operating. It doesn't make any sense. So we need to look at this as if it's going to be a merger into the future, they can't give it to us right away. Can they lease us until the point in time when we'll have ownership of that equipment? So those are the things I want to see. I want to see this, look at this from a perspective of we're a company, we're an entity, and we're making an agreement with another entity. And how do we do that in such a way that there's no reason to pay them to do things if we're doing all the work ourselves? And lastly, one of the things on 2.1, I want to make sure that we're addressing this, and it's about branching out beyond the scope of what a fire department is. And that's in 2.1B, and I'll read it specifically. 2.1B here specifies, and it says emergency and medical services shall mean any and all of the customary and usual activities of trained paramedics providing emergency healthcare services. So again, this is another area where we're setting the city up to hire paramedics and to maintain them and to have to pay whatever the requirements are to have the oversight from a hospital, because they have to be oversight by a hospital.
Where do you see paramedics, sir? I'm not seeing them.
Agree that this contract is dead.
I just want to make sure that this isn't.
We're not talking to hire paramedics, no, sir.
There is a statement.
2.1B.
It says emergency medical services.
Shall mean any and all of the customary and usual activities of trained paramedics providing emergency health care. Okay. I didn't catch that earlier. I'm not sure why.
I just want
Emergency
to make
medical
sure,
services, EMT,
as we go forward,
ECA.
let's do, what are we doing today? And how do we take what we're doing today, merge it into the city. Let's not grow the scope, let's not increase the size, let's not hire a bunch of full-time people if we don't have to. Let's figure out how to take this SAFER grant and MCFR and MCVFD, merge them together and make everybody better, not make an albatross that we're gonna have to live with well into the future. That's just my concern, and I'll leave it there.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bloom, the way you phrased that, it sounded like you were giving Chief Simmons carte blanche to do this agreement. Is that what you intended?
Well, only in the sense of coming up with a revised contract with Chief Murphy. I mean, obviously, it's gonna take approval of the council once that contract's developed, but I do think giving the chiefs the budget and the task is the way to do it, not to go by and say, well, we think we can get bunker gear cheaper, or something like that. I mean, that's, my intent was to be more top level, that the chiefs run the fire department. We run the council and the city, and maintain that he's got a budget and a responsibility. So, did that answer your question? It's not carte blanche, no, because he does have to come back with an agreement that addresses Mr. Aaron's concerns, addresses your concerns. I agree there are holes in this contract, so.
Okay. But the way you worded it, to me, it sounded like you were saying you got control of doing everything to do the merger and set it up.
And put it together to bring them forward.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's still city process. I didn't.
All right. Are you willing to put any type of timeline on him to get back to us?
Yeah.
With the agreement?
Well, that's what we would have to come up with. It's difficult to ask him for specific dates when we can't come up with a date that we're going to agree to a merger or not. So if we do agree to a merger tonight, when could you come back with a contract?
My goal would be 17th at the latest.
No.
I can't,
Come on, guys.
as soon as I speak with Chief Murphy and we can get together, so at the latest, I mean, if we need to shoot for, when's,
The 11th is nice.
the 11th is what?
Is Tuesday, which I think is on.
Tuesday? Whew,
Well, you, okay.
okay.
I agree with Mr. Bloom, and I know that just caused heart attacks everywhere. I think the 11th is when you come back and say, here's what we got. We may turn around and say, okay, you got one more week to straighten out 2 or 3 items. But definitely, the drop dead, would you agree to the 17th?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so that's been thrown out there. Is there any other discussion that anybody wants to make? Because I kind of modified your.
Well, okay.
Modified your motion.
It modifies it in the sense that it adds a specific date.
Right.
Right. But it's still, the motion was to agree to the merger and then the contract. I mean, we're not signing the contract, we're agreeing to the direction of the merger.
Yes, we are agreeing to get an agreement to do merger integration, assimilate, whatever term you want to use, that satisfies the council and satisfies Chief Murphy, because it's my understanding Chief Murphy does have carte blanche to make this.
I'm happy to amend the motion to include the September 11th progress, September 17th drop dead.
Well, preferably, he can bring something back on the 11th. And
Well, that's
otherwise we'll
ideal.
go back.
That's the initial goal, that's what it says, 17th at the latest, but the goal is as soon as we can get it done. And the goal is to shoot for next week.
Speed this up a little bit. So, you have a motion, is the second still stand on it?
It does, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All in favor of what Mr. Bloom said about giving Mr. Simmons the authority on there the way it needs to be. If not, you'll get direction from us or revisions or whatever the case may be.
Yes, sir.
Drop dead date of the following week on the 17th.
Yes, sir.
All, yes, sir.
Let us be clear. This vote is not to merge. This vote is to get the agreement to merge. Is that,
The acceptable agreement.
Hang on, make sure we
I mean-
write it down.
I mean, if we get that agreement, but I don't want somebody coming back saying on September 5th, you agreed to merge, because we didn't. We agreed to give him a.
So, well, at least we're getting the direction.
Right.
We're heading for a merger.
That's
Yes.
what we would
If
like.
I feel like that's probably the best I'll get tonight, and I'll take it.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
All right, is everybody clear with that?
Wait, make sure, what is it, to get the agreement for a merger,
Yes, ma'am.
and then what is included in that?
Included in the merger.
Yeah, what are you gonna go do with Chief Murphy?
We're gonna get a merger put together. I'm gonna take what we have here and we're gonna amend it or adjust it to where it fits the needs of the city.
Okay,
Obviously, I need to change the word paramedics to EMS personnel.